Here we go. And we're in. I think. It's always hard to tell. I've had so many false starts with starting streams. This is the first time that it has worked first time. Amazing. I've jinxed it now. Hi, Rusty. So today is our monthly, don't know what to call it, review. It's a community playtest stream where the games that are being produced in the Discord get priority. Because mostly on this channel, I play a mix of things. I play games for Indies Under the Knife, which comes out every Thursday, where those are games that are just sent to me for feedback, and the idea is people can get feedback on games they're currently working on. Then there are streams where I just play demos of indie games that I like the look of, and if they're good, just play them for a while and go, oh, this is good, isn't it? And if they're not good, then I trash them a little bit. And then there's this monthly thing where members of the Indie Game Clinic Discord sort of get priority to have their games looked at and seen by whoever's watching this. Hey Alejo, hey Rusty. And we've kind of got into the position this month where we've got our first kind of repeats. So I'm going to sort of structure today to sort of start and focus on the stuff we haven't seen before. You can see my lovely, look at that lovely kerning. A lovely space between the text. How ironic for a game called Negative Space. We've got a game called Negative Space coming up, which is quite an interesting concept. It's a deck builder in space, and the dev is trying to do deck building without it being focused on combat and dueling, so I'm interested to see how that works. We've got Sprytewood by Jill, which is, I think, a combination of like monster battling and farming, maybe. I'm not sure how those things are weighted in the game, but it looks very cute. The Radiation is Cosmic, which I know nothing about, which is always exciting. And then we've got a couple of games we've seen before. So Chair Champions by Robert. That was a game that was previously featured on Indies Under the Knife, because a lot of the time, if I review someone's game on Indies Under the Knife and I like it, then I send them an invite to the Discord. And Land Trains by Baz we saw last month, so I've left that till the end. It's going to be like smaller quality of life updates on that game. And Escape From Moo by Alejo, who I think is in our chat. We are actually looking at the copy for that. So mostly going to be playtesting your games. And then at the end, we'll do a little session on marketing copy. So we'll look at Alejo's copy. So when I say copy, I mean the user-facing text on the Steam page. And we'll look at that and sort of have a quick think about whether it's as good as it can be. Maybe take some suggestions from people in the chat and just see if the wording of that is as strong as it could be. So I really like doing these streams. We never know what's going to happen. It's mostly just looking at what people are doing, sort of trying to encourage the games in particular directions, try and bring out the best in them. The chat are usually really helpful on these streams for kind of providing feedback. I will read out what I can, but often I need to sort of get immersed in what I'm doing as well. So I'll be back and forth between the chat and the game. I finally have a second screen, which is why I'm doing this a lot. Very excited by that. And yeah, we often have little diversions where we just talk about game design or just general creative stuff, and I'm interested in doing that session at the end with Alejo's Escape From Moo game, because that's the first time we will have done a live thing to do with sort of writing and marketing and how you talk about your game. So that'd be interesting. Let's see who's filtered in. We've got a few of the devs in. Hi Spoon Sweet. And some of these games have open demos, and when they do, I will drop it in the chat so you can kind of have a look at it now, but I don't think the first one does. So we're going to be looking at Negative Space first. I'll just bring that over here because it's a lovely run-in browser game, which I'm a big fan of. Just makes it really easy to test when we've got that. Second screen, yay! And yeah, and I had to go on Facebook Marketplace, and I didn't even get murdered, even though I'm convinced that Facebook Marketplace is full of murderers. Definitely full of strange people. not strange in a good way. I messaged one person about a screen actually, and he didn't respond to me for like 2 weeks, and then just randomly sent me a message saying, "You come now." Like, no, I've got one now. I didn't respond to him. Just like suddenly ordering me to come and pick up the screen after he hadn't been on Facebook for 2 weeks. It's loading. Loading. Place your bets now. I don't know what we're placing bets on, but... Spoon Sweet said, +1 for not getting murdered. Yeah. It's always good when you don't get murdered. I think if you set the bar there, like, what's the worst thing that can happen today? Probably best not to think too hard about that. Negative Space taking a little while to load, and that's because it has so much games inside of it. I think that's how loading times work. Hopefully the stream doesn't play up too much today. I had the internet service provider look at it last week, which is wild because it's like you're already paying for like premium fiber or whatever, and it's like they don't really turn it on until you complain. And I can't help but get the mental image of like internet service providers are still operating like, you know, phone operators in the 50s where they had a big switchboard and they're like, oh, someone's complained, better actually send them the internet they've paid for, and just set it up properly the first time, you know. Someone said, worries me there's no indication of what's going on with the game at the moment. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, remember, these are sort of early prototypes. This is one that doesn't even have a kind of public... Oh no! This one doesn't have a public demo yet. This is like a private demo. I'll give that one more try. And if we can't get it to work, then I'll come back to it later, because I don't want to hold things up. It's a full bar. Yeah, you just have to be a Karen with your internet service provider. Like a cyber Karen. That's so groovy. Just appreciate the groove for a moment. They've given us volume settings so I can DJ. This would probably work better if you could see what my hands were doing, but this is already great. Like, we've got this retro. I love retro when it's very specific, right? It's like when something isn't just retro in a vague way, but it's like very specific. Like this is giving Toe Jam and Earl. Like, I don't know if people know of that game. It was a very strange. I know they did a Kickstarter for a revival version recently, but it's kind of giving this Toe Jam and Earl, like, very strange 90s Sega game. And this sort of music, it's like you would have got this kind of music in things like Streets of Rage and stuff like that, but it's actually New Jack Swing. This sort of like early 90s pop R&B stuff that you would have got coming out at the same sort of time as Prince and stuff like that. So the actual visual aesthetic, the color palette and the art direction and the music are like really, really closely linked in this game already, and I think it's really neat. It's kind of goofy, right? But it's very deliberate. New recruit. Lovely sound design already. Let's take a moment to appreciate that. So we've got choose your leader. We've got 3 leaders to choose from. And 2 mystery ones. Lovely different sort of character silhouette shapes here as well. Like, if these were all blacked out, you would still be able to tell that they were different. Space helmets are kind of giving Teletubbies. Jill in the chat says, yeah, this sounds more like positive space than negative space, yeah. We've got Captain Raleigh Olibold, Captain Eleanor Sunspot, Captain Jack Mustard. I'm going to go with Captain Jack Mustard this time. Once per mission, refresh all available energy. Okay. So that was our system. We're going inside of it, and then we've got some missions where you only get to choose one, and some where it branches. This is all very, very typical Slay the Spire type stuff, but I'm really interested by the concept of this because it doesn't focus on combat as far as I'm aware. I think there is peril, but not necessarily, you know, trading laser beams type combat, so interested to see how this plays out. Explore the cosmos in search of stars and new cards. That's my favourite thing to do. Okay, this already looks quite abstract. So I've got effort, exert, apply effort at a location or crisis. And these are locations. 5. And this game is obviously in a state at the moment where it doesn't have a tutorial. It's just the game as you would be playing it if you were deep into the game. And I think it can be a good idea to do this and not try and tutorialize too early, because that way you start to, from playtesters, you can determine what is intuitive and obvious and what isn't. And one of the things this game already has, if you look over on the left-hand side, is it already has tooltips, right? And I've played a few games in this sort of category, which... Oh, my macros for changing camera are mapped onto the same buttons as the volume. I've played a few card games and stuff where they didn't have these tooltips, and that's more important to get in early than like an explicit tutorial that tells you step by step how to play, because the tooltips are always going to be useful. Because like, if you put the game down for weeks, forget how it works, and then pick it up again, you're going to understand like the general rules of the game, right? Like if you don't play Hearthstone for a year, you still know how to play it. You just need the tooltips to tell you what the keywords mean, right? So the tooltips are an integral part of any game where the player needs to sort of interpret the rules in terms of text, right? It's telling us what exert means. I'm not entirely sure what exerting effort at a location of crisis means, but I'm guessing these are the things I need to exert my effort on, and then buff increases the card's value for this mission. Large crew, junior crew. So these are basically the same thing with different scores. And the crew commander, exert 5 effort plus an additional 3 crew in hand. So I'm going to play the crew commander on there. Okay, cool. Very abstract at the moment. These are planets. So I can't do that this turn. Oh no, I could, if I can do 4 on 4. And I need to get 4 stars to complete the mission. Okay. There's nothing seems to happen when I don't do anything on my turn. There's not like anything sort of hitting me for not doing that. But again, that's just because I'm still in the state of mind of like these games usually being a battle. Exert effort if target is resolved, buff all crew in hand, or 3. Okay, so that you want to make sure you use that on the kind of final move on something. My energy's up here. I feel like maybe it would be better to bring this down here so you can more clearly associate it with these things that it relates to. I don't want to draw more cards. I think I want to try and do this smaller planet. It's a planet with a hole in the middle. Buff target and neighbouring crew by 12, split evenly. I don't think I can use that right now. Okay, so crew are the blue category of cards, and then items are yellow. Oh no, they're green, they're not blue. So we've also got this concept of neighbouring, which means that like the order that the cards draw into your hand has an impact, which is interesting. That already opens up space to have like more variation in terms of like how a particular deck draws, but not that without adding complexity to what the player is doing, right? If you have a mechanic, this is an example of the sort of card mechanics that you can only do in a video game, because when people are actually holding cards in their hand, they can swap them around, whereas in a video game you can lock them to positions. Okay, that is going to buff all of the cards in my hand because I used it to complete a thing. I don't quite understand this rule, so exert 8 effort plus an additional 3 per crew in hand. Oh, okay, so that will be 8, and then another 3 and another 3. So I can use that on the big planet. Nice. Okay. Starting to understand like the main loop of the gameplay. The thing that I feel is missing is it's so abstract that I don't have a sense of what they're doing on the planet or what they're doing to the planet. And I think if you got little animations in that either showed like a tiny little person going to the planet, or like a sonar thing going bloop, scanning the planet, or something like that, just to illustrate what the crew are doing to the planet, because the gameplay makes sense once you get it. Like I got it in a few rounds there of like you're just beating the score of something with something else, and there are certain interactions that increase the score and so on. Gameplay is perfectly legible, but the kind of theme of what the characters are doing to the planets to resolve the mission is not clear. And I think people will get this a lot quicker if they understand that element of it. Let's see what the chat is saying. Yeah, the stars are basically your score to beat the match you're in, effectively. So I get to choose a card now. We've got 2 items to choose from. Kill target crew, then draw 1 card. Okay, I'm going to try and do an evil run first time, because we chose the very grisly looking captain who looks like a pirate. So we're going to go with the dagger. I'm going to do a completely like theme-based build without thinking too much about strategy. That is often how I build in these games. I know it's not the good way to build, but I like to go like, oh, I'm going to build a fire guy, and just stick with that. And like, if the game is well designed, then the theme and the strategy of the different build kind of pathways go together, right? Look at that lovely planet. It's like a croissant. Nope. And we've got to get 6 stars. So getting the big one in one go, that's worth 2 stars. So it's worth twice as much, but it takes about just over 3 times as much. But we've got our captain here. So he's going to do 5, and then he's going to do another 9 because we've got 3 crew in hand. So I'm going to use the captain on the big one. And that's great because it doesn't. It only expended 1 energy, but it did loads and loads of damage, if you want to call it that. Effort. It did loads of effort. The smoking pipe planet, yeah, the donut planet. I love the variation in the styles of the planets is really fun, and you can sort of see them floating by in the background as well. It's really neat. There's so much to love here. And it's like, I don't know what the lose state is. And I don't necessarily think that's a problem, because it's quite nice to have one of these that isn't about dying, but we'll see. Right, so buff target crew, then buff this. So this upgrades one of my green crew cards, and it upgrades itself. So when I draw it again, it's going to be more powerful, I think. And that's an interesting dynamic, because that is then creating the situation where you want your deck to be smaller. So if there are any deck thinning mechanics, they would interact with this card, because this card is better if your deck is smaller and it can come out more often. That's how I'm interpreting that rule currently. We're going to buff this little guy, and then use him on the harder to beat planet, so that we're not stuck with it. And then skip. Put those crews in their cryo chambers. Buff target and neighbouring crew by split evenly. So I can't use that now because I've not drawn enough crew for it to be worth it. So I'm going to buff that guy because he's the only one I've got this turn. And I'm going to use him to resolve that planet. And I can't do anything else. Hi, Darius. Yeah, there's some nice little moment-to-moment like math stuff going on in this game that I think some people might hate, but I quite like it. I'm going to draw two... Hang on, how many cards have I got now? Okay, so the captain is still in the deck. I don't usually think this hard when I play deck builders, but I'm trying to pass the mechanics so that it's actually interesting to watch. Remember, the captain can do loads in one turn. So if I use this card to draw, I've got like a just under a 1 in 3 chance of getting the captain. And the captain will be really strong this turn because I've already got 3 crew in hand. So I'm going to try and do that, even though it's not really, probably not the most reliable thing I can do. I didn't get him. Ah. Okay, well, we're just going to take a pop at the biggest planet. But yeah, I think the animations when you interact with the planets, giving some indicator of what is happening thematically would be really helpful. Because at the moment it's a little bit unclear. Right, I'm going to use that to buff the captain. And then, look, he's a massive dude now. 17? 17? It would be good if you had some sort of overkill mechanic at some point where you get something for scoring over a particular, or scoring exactly the right amount. That would be very OCD inducing. Probably. Exert effort. If target is resolved, buff all crew in hand by 3. So that is going to resolve that. So these other guys are going to get stronger. And now we've got a 10, so I'll use the junior crew. Really powerful junior crew. They deserve a promotion. Yeah, the diamonds on the right. I think these might be slots for like passives that you constantly have, but we haven't encountered one yet. So I'm still not quite sure how the buffing is working and which buffs are permanent or which buffs are just for the current turn. But, you know, this game is already so polished, it already has such a strong sense of, like, its visual identity, its identity in terms of how things move and sound. And the only bits that are missing are, like, very small bits of communication. Oh, and a tutorial, obviously, but we don't need that yet, I think. You know, work your game out with the core audience, make sure it works for them, and then later on you can start doing the tutorial that assumes that no one has played this genre before, right? Because when you design a tutorial for a game, you kind of want to design for the audience who might never have played that genre before. But there's no point doing that early into development, because that audience aren't the people who are going to help you make the best game that you can in that genre. You're better off doing your early testing with people that love the type of game you're making. Obviously, totally subjective advice. Someone's going to yell at me for it, because whenever I give advice from any position of authority, all of the sort of people with, I don't know, some authority issues jump into the chat later on and go, how dare you tell me what to do? It's like, you don't have to take the advice. You don't have to take anyone's advice. Check who they are and then decide whether to take the advice based on what you think the value of that person's advice is, right? A lot of people never get past the idea of schooling being like someone smart telling you what they know, and it sort of passively goes in your brain and then you become more knowledgeable. It's like when you're learning how to do something at a professional level, that's not how it works. You're sort of responsible for the advice you take and how seriously you take different advice and stuff like that. But so you can see these neighbouring crew effects are going to be more helpful if you have less gear and more crew. So you can already start to see how you might want to try and build a deck that is more weighted towards the green crew cards or more weighted towards the tech cards. Be interested to see how much that plays out. But I think, you know, if you're developing a game like this that has these kind of card rules, like every card you introduce, you sort of are thinking about how it interacts with these other rules. That's going to give me 8. It's slightly better than playing that one, and it's cheaper, so we'll go with that. I didn't really pay attention to this time bar at the top, so we do have a lose state, which is basically failing to get the stars in the time along here. Makes sense. Just make this card really powerful so that when I get it back later, it's really worth it, because it costs 2 energy to use, which often puts me off using it. So that's going to do 10 plus 9. I've got to get that one, because that's one of the new... I just realised that you can't see... There we go. So the score criteria are up in the top left, top right there. So previously I only had to get stars, and now I have to get one of these like rainbow stars to complete the level. So I've got that already, and now I need to get 8 gold stars. Dead crew. The first time we've had a dead crew. So we've got this concept in a lot of deck builders of like dead cards that don't do anything, and it's a really nice way of sort of having a thematic reason why your deck becomes more inefficient. And in this game it's going to be, oh no, you've got a skeleton. I would make this a different colour, so it's really obvious when it comes out that it's a bad card. But look at him. I sacrificed him and now he's dead. The corpse remains. Yeah. Right, that buffs the cards in my hand if it resolves what it does, which I think I can actually pull off this turn. If I do the smaller planet and I use that as my second card, then he's going to get buffed. Be funny if you could buff skeletons. They would become like a little skeleton that can apply 1 effort. What does it say? Exert effort times 2. Does that mean it's going to do double what's on the card? Yeah, 26 effort. Okay, that is double what's on the card. Nice. Right, I'm playing a bit riskier this time. I'm doing a lot of buffs and kind of playing the longer game. So we've got a kind of control style of play that we can do, where we concentrate more on using the gear. So, you know, if you're not familiar with games like Magic the Gathering, people talk about aggro and control, and it's basically how much do you prioritize attacking aggressively versus defending and trying to do a bigger thing later on. And this game is already set up around that kind of spectrum by using the, do you just play the crew or do you buff the crew so that the crew are more powerful later on? And even that on its own is quite a powerful sort of lever to give the player a sense of like their own tactical style of how they approach a problem, which is nice. So one of the things I'm going to have struggle with this neighbouring rule is if I play this card, are these cards then neighbouring because this card got removed from hand, or are they not neighbouring because the card is still there? I'm going to use it. Yeah, it didn't buff this one because it didn't count as a neighbour. I thought that would be the case, but I wanted to check. Right, we've got 3 more days to get 3 more stars. I think that's doable. Oh, I've run out of energy. Hello, Clifford. Does the dead crew still count as a crew as well? Because it does have the keyword crew in the name of the card, right? So if the dead crew still counts as a crew, then we should get a buff of 6 rather than 3. Nope. Yeah, it didn't count as a crew. So I would make sure that the dead crew is not got the keyword crew in, because that makes rules relating to crew members quite confusing. And it makes thematic sense that the dead crew can't help you in that context. But I think if they don't trigger the keyword crew on other cards, then they should just be called skeleton or not anything with the word crew in it, you know? Right, this is the closest we've come to losing so far. But we've got it in that one. Just get those last 2 stars from there. So it doesn't immediately end the match when we've got enough stars. We can sort of deliberately try and overachieve. I would be tempted to say, like, when you hit the target, the match immediately ends, and then each of these additional days that you've got left over gives you some sort of bonus. But let's see. I didn't really pay attention to what happens at the end of the match previously, so maybe this sort of overscoring that I'm doing here is gonna do something. We've started a morbid conversation about what constitutes a crew member. Do you have to be alive to be a crew member? The former crew member, but even then, the crew keyword is still going to trigger the other rules, right? Average together effort of all crew in hand, redistribute evenly. Interesting. Like the communist syringe. Party animal. Exert 5 effort. Buff this +10 when a card is drawn. I'm going to go for having more crew, because I've already taken a card that makes me expend my crew and turn them into skelly bones. So I think we need to replenish them somehow. On day start, add a cadet to your hand. On target resolved, draw a card. That's quite helpful. On crew killed, buff all crew in hand +10. I'm going to go with the cadets because that gives me a supply of sacrificeable crew members. Colossal Asteroid Field. That's a good band name. Does anyone want to be in my doom metal band called Colossal Asteroid Field? We can go to the Starsmith or the Trash Chute. We go to the Starsmith. That's like upgrades, and that's binning cards, I think. Nice. So that's going to do us 9 plus 9. This game is really going to make me learn my 3 times table all over again. Yeah. 3 stars in 1 round off of 1 planet. That's very satisfying. Yeah, the cadets are red shirts from from Star Trek. The cadets are they get destroyed after you use them, but they don't cost any energy. I need to make sure I don't use them before any other cards that require multiple crew to work. End of day, kill random crew in hand. So we're into the second system now. We're starting to get end of day effects that do bad stuff. Cool. Susano said, like the idea of overachieving unlocking levels, so being able to unlock harder levels faster or getting an edge in future levels. Yeah, there's definitely something to aim for there as a player, right? It's either you get the stars and then the match ends early and you overachieve by being days ahead on this timeline, or you always play for the set amount of days, and then if you've overscored on the stars, then something. Like they're converted into like some currency that you keep and then you use later on, you know? Like they become black stars, and then those black stars are like some special shop that you don't see very often, and it kind of gives you an encouragement to try and overachieve. I think that could be cool. Right, end of turn. Right, we're gonna go for the biggest one with this guy, and that cadet mixed with the crew commander is already feels quite like a juicy combo to have those together. What's that? On exploration, replenish energy. Okay. Does that mean... So I get all my energy back when I resolve that. Okay. So explore is what I mean by when I keep saying resolving the card, exploring it. Yeah, that makes sense. Should have kept my party animal. I think I have my party animal in hand this turn. Not letting me play him. Not sure why. My cadet capsule just said, hope this helps. So that gets buffed when I draw a card. I don't think that buff worked then. It's supposed to be 18 now because I drew a card from sacrificing, so maybe those cards don't interact properly. That is gonna buff all crew in hand if I target is resolved. So we're using 2 different words. We're using resolve and explore, and I don't know if they relate to the same thing or slight variations on the same thing. That's gonna buff my crew as well. So we've got some cards that have a sort of danger effect that if you don't resolve them in the turn, then you're going to lose something, you're going to take damage, and then there are some that where it's like if you resolve them, then you're going to get a sort of buff or of some sort, like making something more powerful. Or got development console here. We've got stuck. I don't know why. But, I mean, that's a good... Oh. I think I just did a debug thing of clicking on... Oh, no, that was his ability. I completely forgot that the captain has an ability. Once per mission, refresh all available energy. Yeah, remembering that this guy down here is a button is going to be a challenge, but... I think I've got the game into a state where it's locked, which is a shame... But it does give us a natural breakpoint to kind of check out the next game. So I'm going to close that down now. As much as I would like to play it for a longer time and kind of work out what a different build would be like. Because rather than playing a murderous space pirate who sacrifices his crew. But you can see it's already got a lot of what... a lot of the stuff that people get out of games where you build a deck as you play. Or you build a deck between games or whatever. That kind of... merging of like the theme of the kind of character you're building with the set of mechanics that allow you to sort of piece together a particular play style that feels a particular way. There's a lot of that is already there. It's great. Really cool. So let's check out Sprytewood, which I've downloaded but not installed. Because unfortunately that is the fiddly part of doing these streams is trying to do so many games at once and having to switch between them. And having Windows protecting my PC like this. Windows has protected your PC from Jill's evil game. The malware that you were trying to install called Sprytewood. Let's see how long this takes to install. Ooh, lots of red text there. Really cute music. Oh no, says Jill. We've been getting previews of a lot of these pieces of music in the Discord. They're very good. So we're getting sort of cozy but goblin cozy here. We've got sprites that are little creatures. I think they might live in a wood. I'm just guessing that maybe the sprites live in a wood. And we've got Ocat here, who is a custom emoji in our Discord, but not on the... I should make an Ocat for the YouTube membership. Like, there's a custom emoji function on YouTube. A voice says, "Hey." These colours are quite similar, so I couldn't immediately differentiate between that being a name and that being what they're saying. Was that a voice? Could you, like, come over here? I'm a bit indisposed right now. I need to pick a voice for Goblin to have. I might do Sean Bean because that's one of my go-to D&D character voices. Wait. Is this the skull talking? I know that you can hear me. Press RT to run. Okay, I'm getting the controller out. Hello, Skull. Quickly becoming a theme in these streams that if there's a skeleton, I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time talking to it. Nice hair. Why are you speaking? Well, let's say it's complicated. Oh, and just call me Juno for now. Okay. Let me guess, you're lost, right? I can lend you a hand, and in return, you carry me a while. What? Yep, that would be nice. You seem like a nice being. I like that they call you a being. Or you let me sit here for another 10,000 years until a brave traveller comes my way to finally save me from my destiny. And I guess you don't want me to tell you about the little friends you brought. You're a foreigner. Can't see them yet, huh? What are you talking about? Here, let me help you. The locals call them sprites. That's so cute.
They're spiritual beings, possessed animals, plants, and even objects. No one really knows where they came from or why. Most of the time they're friendly, but I heard they've gotten more hostile lately. These two really seem to like you. Better stay friends, they can ward you. Can you take me already?
Okay, fine.
Great. Here, take that bag. It's smaller on the outside. Let's go to the old farmhouse. I want to show you something. Just follow the path and head north.
Okay. Oh, I think I pressed something. I think I got stuck for a moment there. I'm not sure. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's the owl slime gang. You got to watch out for these guys. I know. I've been to JRPG school. I know to avoid slimes. Ah! My turn. We've got a big selection diamond thing in a nice contrast color, so it's quite easy to see. And then I've got a strike option. OCAT is going to strike one of these. Okay. We're going to go for the one with the least health. It won't let me. Ah, okay, so it's X and then A after you've selected them. Choose a shard. Shrinks 1 damage every turn. That's a poison attack. He did 0 damage. Was that because they dodged? So yeah, I'm... Susanna said, why are we carrying a skull around? Because. You need to press the stripes to draw. Ah, I see. Okay. I'm getting a little bit confused because I'm choosing between these options at the bottom. But then they also have a keybind next to them, and that's been throwing me off because I've been pressing X to try and strike, or the left face button, which might not be X if this is PlayStation controls. But yeah, the colours are quite muted, but I think that's kind of a stylistic thing. But I'm struggling to get them to do any damage, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's a controls thing or... I'll try and tame one of them. I think I'm cancelling the things I try. I know I got that one that time. I just tamed them both. I couldn't do any damage to them, but I tamed them both. I think. Press A on the sprite. Okay. Well, we'll get another chance soon. Okay, I've got a hotbar that I use with the D-pad. Use Y or R to use the item in your cursor. Okay, so that selects. I think I just ate my taming seed. Where did the hoe go? I thought I picked it up. So So you just sort of automatically pick objects up. Okay. I don't know where my tools have gone that I just picked up. Can I chop? Ah, there we go. Okay, so we are able to use that. I don't know why I would want to chop a tree down. So the icon of the down at the bottom, the icon of the axe where it's on a black background. I found that a little bit hard to read, and I think it's because the border of the black background is sort of splitting the axe a little bit. And if it was like all the way around the axe, I guess it's to help differentiate that that's a tool, which makes sense, but I think it needs to go all the way around because the axe is sort of getting lost, the grey of the axe. Okay, I've got a hoe as well. I like the way that the control mapping works with the D-pad on the bar, and the first two slots always use your left and right buttons. I'm using like L1 to do the seed planting now. But then if you go along to one of these other things, you use Y on it, which I feel feels quite intuitive. Doesn't take very long to pick up, which is good. What's this tool? The hammer. Got an outside bed. I can hammer it. Hammer in the bed. Oh, I need to find something I can use my hammer on, otherwise I'm going to be very disappointed. Excuse me. Excuse me, where's something that I can hammer? I know that Jill's going to be in the chat being like, there's nothing to hammer yet. And I'm just going to ignore it because I want to hammer something with my hammer. You know the saying, when you've got a hammer, everything looks like something that you hit a hammer with. Mushroom! 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 How do I get it? I can't pick it up because it's not an item. Because when something's pick upable, it gets like a little border. And then you just pick it up automatically, which is nice. I don't know what these are. Are these a different type of seed? Can I plant them? I don't know. This is my chest where I keep my trees. Gosh, this must have been a lot of work. There's so many little subsystems in one of these games. I get tired just looking at it, imagining the amount of work that goes into making one of these. I can see the interaction between the kind of Pokemon battles and the farming being a really nice set of things. Like, especially for someone who wants to play a game where you farm, but you're not... That's not necessarily combined with the sort of typical Stardew Valley, you know, go and make friends with the baker or whatever. Oh, the baker is so lonely. Why don't you go and make friends with him and talk about bread? It's nice to see, like, a different sort of loop connected to the farming. We need to... But I need to see the combat working, because I don't know why I was... Because when I was trying to fight, it was saying you're dealing 0 damage, so it looked like the attacks were executing and they were just not doing any damage because of something. And I wasn't totally sure what that was, right? Were they attacking but not dealing damage? Were they not attacking and it was saying they dealt 0 damage? Not sure. Look at that lovely... there's a sort of very Studio Ghibli-esque sort of grass blowing in the wind animation on the grass. If you can see that. Really nice. If I want to explore the battles, I've got to talk to bony old Juno. Yes, I planted the seeds. Okay. Go back to the clearing where you found me. Oh no, I need to do Juno's voice again. If you take the eastern path, we're heading into the deep woods. Don't worry getting lost. If you want to head back, just talk to me. That's a nice mechanic. So Juno allows you to sort of teleport back or something. I've done a fair bit of wandering away from where I was. Now, if this is the only patch of brown around the farm, then that was a really helpful navigational thing. So I would consider using the brown as a way to play, to sort of guide the player back, so they don't get lost. That would be good. Let's see. Darius said, if you want to head back, just talk to the head. Yeah, exactly. Look, I've got an OCAT. I've got a foxy thing. We want to fight some sprites. I love the way that the goblin walks. So good. Such a good animation. I thought this was where I found them. Maybe I'm not going the right way. I can see how this can develop in the long term though. It's like really nice because you have these items out here in the wild as well, and if some of these are harvestable, then you've got the farming to do one type of harvesting, and then you've got maybe some foraging as well, because that will take you to places where particular types of monsters live. And you could sort of make it so that if you need one type of ingredient, you've got to go to this place, and that's where this type of sprite is, and you know, in order to fight that sprite you might need more of another type of ingredient for some particular, you know, resistance or whatever. That little entrance off the screen was really hard to make out. I sort of gave it a chance. I was like, I will try and walk through there, but I think something to make that more clearly look like a way out of the level might be helpful. I want to get at least one more combat in while we're on this game. I'm conscious of time because we've done 2 games so far, but they are new ones that we haven't seen on stream at all yet. Look at all these lovely little dust motes floating around. Isn't that pretty? I'm often a little bit wary of games that have a little bit too much attention paid to like mood stuff, like those dust motes and the grass and everything too early. But this is a game that is the type of game that is very driven by that, so I don't think it hurts to... Okay, there it is. Going through takes you into the deep forest. It's a labyrinth. Time and space is weird in there. The sprites we encounter get stronger the deeper you delve. You can check your sprite status in the sprite bag. They can level up and change your active sprites, or look at their charts. You can catch and use a total of 6. The sprite management system and releasing sprites is currently in development. Okay, cool. It says I can do that with B, but I think maybe I have to be in the dungeon, as it were. Need more yellow paint, yeah. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Right. So. Strike. Strike the moth thing. I'm still doing 0 every time. Choose a shard. Okay, right. So it's, yeah, you explained this before, but I haven't really tried to do it with my own hands. So it's like, it's a bag builder, you're drawing the shards and then you use them to strike. Okay. So I think to avoid the issue I've been having, just not letting people strike without drawing would at least teach people the mechanic initially. So up on the top right, that is, I'm going to switch camera, sorry. Up on the top right, that is the shards that their creatures are drawing. And then in order to draw, in order to attack, I have to draw these things. And that is filling up an attack power. Maybe the shards are doing other things as well, I'm not sure. And I think you can go bust as well. But right, that's a neat mechanic. It's kind of Quacks of Quedlinburg kind of bag builder type thing. So if the sprite overloads, then they're going to get healed. So that 7 number there is how many shards they've got in their bag. So you can see it going down the little purple number next to their health bar. That's how many they've got, how many they've drawn. I've drawn everything they've got. And then it says be careful, so I've managed to overdraw. Yeah, I think I basically think because so many of these mechanics are very new that you're going to have to eventually teach them in quite a slow way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think as long as, like, don't get into tutorializing it too early because some stuff will change and you'll have to just redo loads of stuff. So probably better to just explain to people how to play the game, test it, make sure that the game works when people understand it before you do too much tutorialization. But it is going to need a lot of hand-holding in the early game for people to understand what's going on, I think. Like having these emerge from that purple bag and like fly across or something, just so that people get a quick, more intuitive sense of what's going on. But it's good. It's a cool combat system. I like it. Yeah, I don't quite understand how those little reward shards work at the end of each round, but at least I understand the attacking now. Overkill. Oh no, still alive. Cool. We got it to work. Sort of understand it a little bit now. I'm interested to play this some more, but we're going to have to move on for today because we've been sort of like an hour on 2 games. But I think that's really neat. It's a really nice combination of things. I think you're going to have an interesting challenge long term of like how the farming and the combat relate to each other, but those are, it's not a bad challenge, it's just there's a lot of potential for how those things interrelate and how, you know, farming things could relate to getting shards or improving certain types of shards and so on. There's so much opportunity there for how you design this going forward, and it's exciting and interesting, and it's really cool to see someone doing something different with a farming game and something different with a Pokemon game, right? Because, I mean, one of the earliest reviews I did on this channel was of a kind of Pokemon homage, and I was sort of complaining that the game of just choose a character, choose an attack, choose an enemy in that kind of 90s style JRPG stuff feels so outdated and just doesn't really give you enough to chew on as a sort of adult with a strategic brain. So it's good to see people trying different stuff, and I think that kind of blackjack style boom or bust, push your luck thing of bag building and drawing things out of a bag is a really neat thing to combine with that. It's going to need a lot of work done to communicate what's happening and make it clear what's happening, I think. But you're developing a very unique type of game there, so I would be very wary of putting too much tutorial in too early, because you just have to redo it all. So just explain how the game works to people first before they play it. You know, maybe make a video explainer when you want people to playtest the game. Maybe make like a short video explainer of the combat, like with you just speaking over it, and just whack that in the game as your tutorial, or get people to watch it before they play or something, so that you don't have to spend like weeks and weeks developing a tutorial for gameplay that you might just change a month later. That's always the danger with tutorialization. It's just doing it too soon. The next one on the list is The Radiation is Cosmic, which I know nothing about, but has a cool title. So let's check it out. Get over here. Oh, I thought it was a play in browser one. I haven't downloaded it yet. It's going to tell me it's malware again. Here we go. Welcome to the monthly stream where we install as much malware on my computer as possible. Yeah, I think when it comes to tutorialization in that last game as well, think about the keywords or tooltip stuff that came up in the Negative Space game, of like, whatever guidance you can put in the game that's sort of always there, it's better to do that first than the sort of explainer stuff for the first time player, because the tooltips will always be relevant, they'll always be necessary. And any kind of game that's sort of a strategic turn-taking game, people are used to having those, whether it's a card game or like a city builder, anything where you can sort of hover a mouse over a thing and it should tell you what it is. Much more important feature to get in than a sort of full-blown polished tutorial, you know, earlier in the game. But I think the thing that was making me struggle most with the Sprytewood combat was that you've got a lot of key mappings showing up at the bottom that tell you what different keys do, but then it's sort of also expecting me to use A to confirm things. So you've got like a partial map of what all the keys do on that screen, and then some of the things are missing. So I found it a bit confusing because of that mix of, it's like telling you some of the controls but not all of the controls. Right. The Radiation is Cosmic. Let's take a look at the description of this game just in case there's some instructions on the itch page. I never read the instructions on the itch page. Have a look. This is an alpha stage game looking for feedback on movement and controls. Climb the melting ice castle and boost into the stratosphere, collecting resources to upgrade your gear and harnessing deadly radiation. Look, this looks great. Look at this. Look at the style of this. Seal the leaking cosmic portal and protect your family from sinking into the growing, glowing ocean. I hate it when my family sinks into a glowing, growing ocean. Exit the cave to start climbing. Exiting cave begins exposure to radiation. If you hit max radiation exposure, you will go back to the cave. WASD movement, hold space to jump, and R to boost. Okay. R to boost already feels like it could be a bit awkward because it's taking one of my fingers away from the WASD, which I might need to steer while I'm boosting Let's try the controller. A or X to jump, Y or triangle to boost. Press E within range of the console to open the upgrade panel. Okay. Hopefully this stuff is tooltipped in the game, but you can never know when it's an early version of something. Let's take a look. Hello, thank you for playing this game. A strange portal has opened in the sky and is leaking damaging radiation. Cool, let's play the game. Start. Can I invert the controls on that? Yeah, thank you. I used to be a Y inverted guy, and one day just everything changed, and I'm not sure why. I can't get out of the menu now though. What's going on? What's going on? Close options. There we go. Resume. Smugpire said, is your desktop background Rhea Lucaria? Yes, it is. Where I went to school. Why is my guy going, oh? This is so trippy. What are these? Are these like... Okay, these are collectibles. Is the donut a good collectible as well? Yeah, okay. We need donuts. Got a little bit of lag there. I'm collecting components for something. Now, obviously, there are a few bits about this game that don't look as... I think the actual everything in the world looks quite stylish. It's like... It's very specific kind of style, but the text and stuff needs to be brought up to match that standard-wise. But it's cool. It's sort of... It reminds me of something called Memphis style graphic design, which is that sort of style that you see in like the background of 80s and 90s soaps like Saved by the Bell and sort of like Talking Heads albums and stuff. It looks like that but made in 3D, and that's really cool. And it's the guitar music is an interesting choice as well. Okay, my radiation is going up. I've got some bars on the right. I'm not sure what they relate to, but they're all color-coded to be the same thing, which is a bit confusing because I think the bars on the right are good things, and the radiation is a bad thing, right? So using the same color for those meters feels a little bit confusing. So I'm going to need to do my boost to get up there. Collide with one of 3 of these to select temporary perk. This is very cool. So also reminds me of Jumping Flash, which no one is going to know unless they are like the same age as me. There's a PlayStation 1 game where you were like a robot rabbit. That was a very cool example of like making the character design really communicate what type of game it was going to be. This is sort of like Only Up with a jetpack kind of thing. Ah! Oh no. Not the glowing ocean. The delay on the jet kind of refilling is interesting. It creates some nice sort of edge of your seat moments where you're falling down and you think you're going to die, and then you can just about snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. This is cool. Right, it's re-inverted my controls. Oh. So yeah, I think the UI around the radiation and the abilities could be a bit clearer. I want to get to one of these upgrade panels so I can see what I'm collecting these things for. I'm collecting some sort of tire or nut, and glass panels and some wood, I think it's supposed to be. Seamus says auto buy because of the experimentalness. Yeah, it's like only up but artsy. I like that. It's a good combination of things. When I was playing Blood Thief the other day, I was thinking about how lots of people say, "Oh, first-person platforming is like a sort of cursed genre that you just people don't like it or you can't do it well." And I don't think that's true. I think you just need to have it. You know, stop trying to model a character and like treat the character more like a vehicle of like, I mean, it's a character, right? You're a spaceman or you're a ninja or whatever, but like you really need to go for a game feel that emphasizes like how that particular character feels to pilot. And this kind of floaty spaceman thing here is really nice. It's quite relaxing as well, even though it's a sort of avoid the peril kind of game. So I've got a zoom thing, a little rush dash I can do with Y or triangle. But I don't seem to be able to use it when I'm in the air. It's only on the ground, which makes it feel like it's of limited use because there aren't any situations yet where I need to rush forward so quickly. Can we get in there? That big screw. Collide with one of 3 to select temporary burst. Spear, radiation reduced battery, jetpack capacity thrust. Okay, so I can't really choose. It's telling me what's in the 3 things, but not what each one is. I think if you're going to do that as your sort of power-up thing, I would go the Mario Kart route and have like a visual for the power-up and then have one thing to collect that is spinning between all 3. Because it's not really a choice. We're presenting it as a choice, like choose one of these physical things. Oh, okay. It says if you collect a sphere, you get radiation reduction. And if you collect a battery, you get jetpack capacity. But they're all together, so I'm not choosing between those 3 things at that moment. Yeah, I think the way that it communicates that could be a bit more elegant, but I'm glad we can get the occasional chance to reduce our radiation. Just need to find an upgrade panel so we can see what the actual sort of reward loop of this game is, I guess. Oh, the sort of investment of the resources we're picking up. It's a cheese grater. Ah, you can climb it. That's why it looks like a cheese grater. That's cool. Well, it's like, you know those sort of old hip-hop videos like Busta Rhymes and stuff where it looks like someone's inside of a cheese grater. One of those. I like how melancholy the music is. Ah, my booster stopped working. Ah. I think I've got stuck in a state where my boost doesn't work anymore. The arms sort of remind me of like a water bear. You know, like what are they called? tardigrade. Feel like the character should be one of these. It's like chubby little arms waving around. Good luck on the release, Playnice. Do you want to summarize what Sin Cards is for the chat? It's a game where you sin and play cards. I seem to have got stuck in a state in this game where I can't boost. I'm going to try one more run just because I want to get to the point where we can actually spend some resources. Like a giant tardigrade that's a sort of person. There's a lot of waiting around for the boost, and I would think maybe when you're on a platform it can just immediately start filling up again, because you don't really gain anything by making the player wait that way. I mean, when you're in air, it sort of makes sense that you don't, you want to create that kind of sense of danger of like, can I make this jump? So having a delay to fill it up when you're in the air makes sense, but maybe when you're walking it can just, like, as soon as you land it just fills back up again, because like just standing there waiting for it to fill up again is a bit frustrating. I know it's quite a chill game and that's okay, but it's sort of a bit unnecessary to do that. Right, so we've got an arc realm here where we've got lots of stuff to climb, and then we've got a selection of things over there. So I think maybe I just had bad luck before, because there's 3 things to choose from over there now. And the first time I just got 3 of the same thing. So maybe it's random and I just got a bad draw. Battery, jetpack capacity. We're going to go for the jetpack capacity. This is quite an elegant way of doing a sort of shop in a game where you don't really want to be bringing up loads of extra screens and stuff. Although I think we do have one of those coming up based on the control stuff I read earlier. Can I get over there? That's quite a big jump. Maybe if I boost first. Yeah, okay. So we can't boost in midair, but we can boost before a jump and make the jump further, which is a nice move set. Hi RS. Basically, I do 2 types of playtesting. I do something called Indies Under the Knife, which is on the homepage of the channel, and I release one of those a week, where it's like a pre-recorded video where I play someone's game, and that's like for anyone, but there is quite a big backlog. And then the games we're checking out today are the ones from Discord community members, which is like a, kind of paid thing. I'm prioritizing playing the ones we haven't seen before, and then we've got a couple that are kind of more repeats of stuff we looked at last month. So oof. Okay, I don't think I'm going to make it much further on this without loads of retries, but I really like this. I wanted to show the thing that the kind of art direction reminds me of, because I know it's called the radiation is cosmic, and we've got this sort of guitar which is very like ground control to Major Tom, but I think it actually, the visual style of how all the 3D is done in this game reminds me of this. And if you've ever seen this graphic design style, it's like sort of late 80s, early 90s, used in lots of things like Saved by the Bell animated intro, and like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You probably would have seen him with a shirt on like this at some point. And yeah, it's called the Memphis style. And I feel like the art direction is already going in this direction. And if you made it a game that was all in this style, then it would feel like more kind of holistically designed. Because at the moment, if we go from here, and if you look at the text on here, the font feels very placeholder. And if we go back to the main menu, or if I die, I guess. If I die... You know, we've got these kind of green bits of UI at the top and bottom that sort of fit in, but I think maybe, yeah, having a look at this school of design and how it handles typography, how it like what sort of typefaces and stuff people use in you know, old TV shows and magazines and stuff that have this visual design will give you a very good sense of like how to make all of this text in the game look much more professional, because you can find something that just like the game is already evoking this, so you can like lean further in that direction and go, okay, look, this Memphis design thing, this kind of MTV style thing, that is a cool way to do the title of this game, or to do a button in this game, or whatever. So yeah, it's like the 3D art in the game is already suggesting a graphic design style, and leaning more into that is going to make this game really shine in terms of the art side of things, I think. Yeah. The feedback on the movement, Frederick said maybe you could be a bit faster on the ground. I think that's true. It took me a while to work out that you could boost on the ground and then jump, and that was sort of how you made those longer jumps. And once I got that, it felt really good. I also think because it's kind of floaty and slow, we could have a little bit more sort of sliding momentum where you don't immediately stop after you land. And that could create a nice sort of sense of peril of when you land a jump and you sort of slide forward a little bit. I would play around with those sorts of factors, because there's not much else in this game, and that's fine. It's fine to make a like minimalist game that's just about doing one or two things. But then if you are doing that, then the movement needs to be kind of interesting, right? And often with like action games and skill games, when you're jumping and like, or fighting, or doing some combination of jumping or fighting, it's not necessarily about like producing... I mean, there's a big debate about this in the platformer community, because Celeste is like a really responsive platformer where every action you do is very clearly predictable and stuff. But sometimes in action games, it's like the idiosyncrasies of the controls or the behavior of the character are what give the game its character. So some slippiness or some floatiness or any of those types of things. My main frustration was just like standing on the ground waiting for the recharge to happen. Like, it's just kind of unnecessary, and it does kind of add to the sort of slow feeling of the game, but I think it's something that a lot of people are going to find frustrating with that. Big sneeze. Yeah, Super Meat Boy is a very slidey platformer, isn't it? I haven't played it in years, but I can sort of picture it in my head now. Right, let's shut that game down. What have we got next? Chair Champions, which is a play-in browser game. So this is by Bucketful Games, and this is an interesting one. I did a video on it a few months ago. And it is a racing game, a top-down racing game, made with sort of very kind of JRPG style assets. And it's just a fun little Mario Kart type thing. Yeah, we haven't seen this game in a while. I mean, it's Robert, isn't it? This one. It is Robert Bucketful. Remembering people's real names and their developer names, it's like so much to remember. And I think, you know, Robert has been doing a lot of updates to this, adding new characters and stuff. And I really liked featuring this game before because it allows us to talk about this, which is this feedback quest jam, which I'm currently not involved in, but I have signed up to be one of the streamers. So feedback quest is like a regular jam hosted by a group of people where it's like you submit the game you're already working on to it, and then streamers play it and give feedback. So it's kind of like what I do on this channel, but like a bigger attempt at doing that. So I thought that was really cool. And it just goes to show, I've seen a lot of people say, it's really hard to get people to play test and so on. There is stuff out there. You just have to want it and know where to look. So there is stuff happening for like getting play testing from and getting feedback from a broader range of people. And Robert has been like updating this with new content. And another cool thing that's been going on here is sort of incorporating things from other indie IPs. So because it's got like a very character-driven game where you sort of collect and unlock characters and then use them to race, he's sort of doing the Mario Kart thing of bringing in characters from different places, and it's just by reaching out to the developers or publishers of other games and saying, hey, I've got this cute racing game, it's got these other characters in it, can I put your character in the game? And it's like he's getting agreement and putting them in. So we'll see if anyone recognizes the character that's new. I think I might need to put a password in, actually. Let me just get the Discord open, because I know I saw some instructions around that, but I haven't memorized them. Oh yeah, there's a secret. Right, how do I full screen this so that we get rid of all the stuff around the edge? I think I'm going to just download it so that we can get it full screen properly. Yeah, sorry for the delay. I'm going to give us the desktop version so that we can full screen it, because I can't work out how to full screen that at the moment. Maybe I just zoom in like that. That'll do. Fred said, question for the jam, the collab jam running through April. Do I plan on playing all the games from the jam and giving feedback, or just a selection? It's really hard to say because we've had about 200 people join. I don't know the size of the group, so let's assume that people are just working in pairs, right? That's the most conservative guess we can have. Then there's 100 games. And I'm not necessarily against doing a couple of days of streaming where we play through all 100 of them, but I would want to make sure that they get enough time. So maybe put a voting mechanism in there and vote for the top set or something. I need to go back on itch and check how to do that stuff, because I haven't done it in a while, actually. Plainese said, do you have a game dev book or podcast you love? I listen to them while doing the dishes and all. I really like Designer Notes. It's presented by a couple of different people, but it's basically game designers talking to other game designers. And sometimes they're not necessarily strictly designers. They're like creative directors from different companies and stuff like that. But you sort of get to learn about people's entire careers that way. And sometimes it's more about design decisions and stuff, and sometimes it's more about... there we go. Full screen. And sometimes it's more about like how they got into things. I really like that one. It helped me when I got my first job in a studio. It sort of helped me to sort of professionalize myself and think about like what the industry is like generally, because I'd be listening to like one interview with a very indie developer, you know, like someone like is it George Fan who made Plants vs Zombies? It'd be someone like that who was like a hobbyist indie developer first, or Lucas Pope or something, and then it'll be like someone from Blizzard or Naughty Dog, and it's just all jumbled together. And I quite like that. I think the sort of YouTube-y culture of just only listening to hobbyists talk about what they're learning is not a great way to sort of learn quickly. It's seductive because we like to learn from people who are at the same stage as us, or like one up, but I would always rather not be the smartest person in the room, you know, and like gravitate towards people who've been doing something for 30 years and see what they have to say about something, even if it's a bit out of date. Single player. Yeah, if you want tips on GDC stuff, obviously a lot of it's in the vault and it's paywalled, but out of the stuff that is available on the website or on YouTube, I tend to watch the postmortems where people talk about a project, like a specific project they've done, because they tend to be very in depth about specific problems that game has, and I'd always prefer to see people talk about a specific project and solving the problems in it rather than give like generic, here are the 5 things a video game must do type advice. It's one of the reasons why this channel is built the way it is, and it's built around playing and feeding back on games that are works in progress, because I think there's only so much you can learn from learning design as an abstract set of principles. Right, time attack, AI opponents, difficulty, player name. Tight crash lands. Oh, I might be giving something away there. Ah! Ah! Look who it is! Does anyone recognise this guy? Yeah, designer notes. Think Like a Game Designer is good as well. Think Like a Game Designer is often very board game focused, but it is still good. We got the guy from Crashlands. And the developer. I'm going to be the guy from Crashlands, because we can. But what a cool idea, right? It's not going to work in every game. Like, you're not going to make a serious horror game and then be like, hey, can I put the character from your Stardew Valley in my game? But this is a genre where there is an established trend of like bringing together characters from different IPs to race, right? That's what Mario Kart is. And that's what Smash Brothers is, right? So there are types of genre where this kind of like playful marketing move of incorporating other IPs is very fitting, and I think what he's doing here is just great. I want to choose one of the not very good chairs, because when I played this before, I just found it a little bit too easy. The boss. Yeah, I was playing with the hover chair before. I'm going to go with the boss, because it's got like low stats in 3 areas, or middling stats in 3 areas. Can I controller this? So you pick up your chair that you selected, and it sort of becomes the colour of your character, I think. So the shape of the chair is defined by the type of chair you chose, and then I think your character has a... So there are apparently places in this game where you can kind of get off the chair and go and do stuff, but I haven't quite worked out what they are yet. I mean, I've been told what some of them are, but I need to watch out for them and see where they are. I do still feel like the camera is a little bit zoomed in, and I would find the general driving in this game a lot more. Is that with the person? I would find the driving a little bit more intuitive and perhaps even more fun if we were zoomed out about 100%. Because I think the big blue arrow is only necessary because you can't see enough of what's going on. And I don't know if the decision to keep it this zoomed in is for like technical reasons, or if it's to make the art look a particular way. But I would always prioritize the player's ability to see things and understand what's coming up. I think that big blue arrow or big white arrow might not even be necessary if we could see more. I was thinking when we did Blood Thief the other day, I was playing Blood Thief, which is like super fast speedrunning. It looks like a boomer shooter, but it's like a first-person ninja speedrunning game, really. Of like how much that felt like a racing game. And I really enjoyed it, and I often don't enjoy racing games. I used to play them a lot when I was younger. I usually needed something else, like a bit of fighting or something. Like I always loved things like Wipeout or Road Rash, where you could beat each other up a little bit while you're racing. And I think it's worth thinking about like what kinds of skills your game is testing. And I think the standard ones for racing is reactions and also memory, because you're sort of like having to learn the track, right, so that you can respond to it. I think this track is a little bit hard to learn, and I think just more variations in like the color and style of things as you go around would make it easier, because at the moment, like one of those red rugs, it's a hazard, but it's not like a landmark. I can't like see an area and go, oh, we're going into the red rug area now, right? Or we're going into the green rug area. I think a little bit more variation in the style or the colouring of the assets as you move around the track might make it a bit easier to learn the track. I don't know why I always go over that rug. It's because I want to get in the way of that person watching the TV. We've got like Easter eggs. Is this the Easter build? That's cute. I've got bunny ears on as well. I go to the moon. I steal the moon. I sit on the toilet. Why can't I sit on the toilet? This is a game about sitting down. Come on. Look at that crazy clock. But yeah, everything in this feels really nice. I do think, you know, when I played this before, I suggested like throwing the player off their chair when they hit a rug, which is probably a bit too punitive, right? But I think it would be good if there were some more ways that you could come off of your chair, because you already have that mechanic, right? I can already do that, and it's mostly just for like funny little Easter eggs or finding things. And I think if there were a few things that could like bump you off of your chair and maybe put you a little bit away from your chair so you have to run and get back on the chair, then you're sort of making the most out of that mechanic that's already there. I think one of the issues with it being a domestic setting, like obviously it's like the humour of the game comes from that. It's just like it gives you a mental picture of just normal people having a race around a house or an office on chairs, which is really funny. But, you know, one of the reasons why we do put so many games in dungeons or some sort of fantastical or science fiction setting is it means if you want a big thing to come out of the wall and whack people, you don't need to justify it, because it's like, of course there's a big thing that comes out the wall and whacks you. We're on the Death Star or we're in Bowser's Castle. But because of the setting and the tone of this game, it's like goofy, but it's real world goofy. And that means if we want some stuff that comes out of the wall and bashes you off your chair, which I think could be a really nice feature, it's like, okay, what on earth would that be? You know? Maybe it's an animal. Maybe there's like like a horse or a dog or something that will jump out and knock you off your chair. I haven't had a chance to look at the chat yet because this is taking a lot of focus, but I will take a look in a minute and see what people are saying. I find this game really charming, and I think the whole like sort of creative approach to it and all of the updates and this kind of goofy sort of fan servicey type stuff of putting different characters in is really fun, and I'd love to see more of it. I talk about this a little bit in some of the videos I did about collaboration recently, where it's like, just because you're the lead developer on the game doesn't mean you need to be the person that creates and owns the IP. Like, and I'm not talking about this from a legal sense. What I'm saying is, you know, people who can program, people who can use game engines aren't necessarily always the people with the best creative ideas. And you can often get a lot out of just like collaborating with someone who already has a character, right? Like, I don't know, find someone that already illustrates or animates and has never made a game and say, hey, you've got some really cool OCs, let's make a game with your OCs, and, you know, I'll have some control over some of the game design stuff, but I want it to be your world and your characters because you're already making something cool, you know? Another example I would give would be like musicians. Like, musicians often have like an art style that goes with their work and a set of themes that they explore and stuff. And you know, one year when I was teaching, we did an ARG. So in the third year of a degree, you're often expected to do some kind of work experience. And it's really hard to do work experience for games, especially if you don't live in a games town, because it's like, oh, let's send 50 students to go and make tea and coffee in an office, and they won't learn anything about game development, right? One of the projects we did was we made an ARG for a local musician, and she'd done one before. She'd made an ARG all over the internet. So if you don't know what an ARG is, it's like an alternate reality game is where there's like a massive treasure hunt puzzle that occurs. Could be bits in real world where you have to go and find something. Could be stuff where you have to look things up on the internet, and the puzzles are so weird and complex that they require like hundreds of people working together to solve them. And we never launched it, but I got this class of 50 students to make an ARG for this musician, and she had all of this lore around her album and stuff that was to do with like dragons and like motherhood and stuff, and it was like a really interesting, weird science fantasy concept that was like personal to her, but it had all of this cool dragon imagery and was like weird cyberpunk dragon stuff. So we got that was the work experience for our final years that year, for like a whole semester. And what the students did was they all kind of pitched in, coming up with ideas for puzzles and how they could put things on the internet, and I helped with some of that. And then the students that were naturally more inclined towards the narrative and the writing side of things did that. The students that could do technical stuff did that. We had a group of students made this like giant dragon egg in Unreal that was covered in scales like a pine cone, and you could rotate it, and it had this like alien language where you could trigger the alien language by clicking on the different scales, and you had to learn like a 4-glyph sequence from somewhere else on the internet to unlock it. And one of the students who I actually got a job for at one of my previous employers afterwards, because he was like one of the best Unreal developers I knew, he made like a macro in Photoshop. So they made an alien language with like a bunch of different glyphs overlaid on each other, like different strokes of the lines, and then he wrote a macro that exported like every combination of that, so that because they needed like 100 or 200 of these glyphs to cover the egg to have like all different unique symbols that look like kind of alien words. And he wrote a macro, exported all these different variations, and then went through and picked out all of the ones that would go on it. And the idea was, right at the end of the trail of all the puzzles, you would get this egg from GitHub, and you wouldn't know what to do with it unless you'd got the sequence of symbols from somewhere else, and then you would enter it and you would get a prize for opening it. And yeah, we made so many components of it. But I mean, that's an example of, they did work experience, they made a game, they did loads of elements of game design. Some of them did technical elements of game development or making art and stuff like that. Some of them did narrative design, and they got a really cool work experience for what could have been a live brief. You know, we could have launched that. We never did in the end, for whatever reason. But that is using someone else's IP, right? And then one of the wonderful things about using someone else's IP is you don't have to like worry about whether the thing you're making is cool, because someone has already proven that it's cool with their other audience. You know, even if it's a musician that has like 200 fans for their thing, or like, I don't know, some furry comic book artist that has like a couple of hundred fans, that already puts you like at a massive head start from other game developers, because you're already working with something that someone out there already thinks is cool, and all you've got to do is make it playable, right? All you've got to do. But yeah, I mean, I think the Crashlands thing here is another example of that. It's like, how can you use other people's IP in a way that makes your thing more appealing, right? And people just often don't think this way. They're so like, oh, I'm making my game on my own and it must all be my idea. And like, it's not, there's more than one way to skin a cat, you know? Let's see what the chat's saying about this game. So Fred said, technical thing. The camera currently snaps to pixels and it makes the game feel a bit less smooth. Yeah. Darius said that Robert said it's a conscious design decision to have the camera so zoomed in because it's part of mastering the game, is memorizing the track. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, it's always hard to tell when something is difficult. Is it like a usability issue of just like, this should be designed differently, or is it part of the challenge of the game? Susan who said, don't want to think about toilet racing. Yeah, also said this has good streamer value. It's like fun to watch. Why is there a chicken in the wall? I didn't clock the chicken in the wall. Ah, Anze, that's a really good idea. You could have a level that was a split office with a street crossing. But I mean, if this game ends up with you getting hit by a car as you cross the road, you'd have to make that feel goofy, right? You couldn't make that feel like a nasty thing, because that's a real thing that happens to people, right? Yeah, I find the zoomed-in camera a little bit of a struggle, and I get that racing games are often about memorising the track. I don't think I've ever played a top-down racing game that was this zoomed in. But at least, you know, as you said, it's coming from a design direction. It's something that the developer has done because they want a particular type of experience, and I'm behind that all the way. You know, if the reason was, well, that's where the camera is. You know, like I've seen it quite a lot where people get attached to like an art style or something, and they want things to be a particular size because then you can see details and stuff like that, and that is important to a degree, but it's not as important as like making the game legible, right? So you know, I would prefer it to be easier to see what's coming up in this, but at least the developer has come at it from a game design point of view of like, the camera is the way it is because I want this particular type of experience where you can't see where you're going and you need to memorize it. If the reason was the camera is the way it is because I want the character to be this big on the screen so you can see this pixel in the artwork, then that wouldn't be a good reason from my perspective. So, big fan of Chair Champions. It's like, I don't play a lot of racing games, but I find this really, really charming, and I just love the whole direction of it as a project. I think it's great. Let's take a look at Land Trains by Baz. I think I have a download for this one. Susanoo said camera's not an issue for them and they do play this kind of game. Yeah, exactly. This is why it's just important to you sort of have feedback from general people and then have feedback from people that do play the type of game, because I talked about this in the recent video I did about playtesting. It's like one of the most helpful things you can do is profile your playtesters so that the data you collect is coming, you know where it came from. Like, you're making a real-time strategy game, and here's what the people who play real-time strategy games said, and here's what the people who don't said. And it doesn't mean you ignore the people who don't, because they might have some really helpful usability feedback. But if you don't record like what you know about their gaming tastes and what they play, then you don't have that important piece of information to sort of compare the feedback with. Plainies said, is gore and horror fine to stream on YouTube? I usually warn people about it, but the actual rules aren't totally clear, because like when I put a video up or sort of basically the rules all start to kick in. You know, obviously there's hate speech rules and stuff, but the rules in terms of what you're allowed to depict start kicking in when you go to monetize something, and you have to go through a checklist of saying, does your video have a person dying in it? Does your video promote hatred towards furries and stuff like that? And you have to go through and tick lots of boxes, and it puts you in a category for ads of like safe, potentially unsafe, or whatever. And so I would think a lot of the time with things like gore, you can, but you have to report it. And if you don't report yourself accurately, then you kind of get blacklisted as someone who lies about the content of their videos, right? So, yeah, obscenity is a hard line to define. And a lot of the time, I can show you the categories in a minute, but one of the things it says is like, is there any gore in the first few minutes? So I think what they often want to do is, if you're playing a horror game, you sort of have a little setup for the first few minutes that allows people to identify what kind of content they're watching. So they don't immediately get dropped into like someone's head being cut off, right? Even though that might be an amusing and shocking way to start the video. So that basically gives people like a safety buffer to go, they click on the video and suddenly they realise they're watching a gory horror game, and they have a bit of a chance to sort of nope out of it when they realise what they're... So some of the criteria for like what you're allowed to do in a sort of PG video is based on that stuff. It's like how early in the video or how frequently does it occur. I've had gory games on here where I've blurred it or censored it a little bit. We had the weird Bible game a couple of months ago where you could cut a baby in half, and it was like a Minecraft baby. It was so cube, right? But it's like, it's not about the realism, it's about what's being represented. And when you combine that with the realistic sound of a baby crying, it is quite disturbing. And I would say that having a toy-like childish aesthetic makes it disturbing in another way as well. So that's the only time I think I've really censored any gore or not shown it, because it was like the developer was doing it for shock value, and I found it just crass, and I didn't really want to like support what they were doing, because I found it crass. And it was like they were trying to make this point about how nasty the Old Testament is, and it's like, I know that. I don't need like a dodgy art game to point out that the Old Testament is violent and nasty in places. It's like very, you know, Ricky Gervais angry internet atheism type stuff, like gore being used in a particular way. That was the only time I've really found something like that I didn't want to show, I think. Yeah, the rules about what you're allowed to represent are really unclear about when something is a cartoon versus when it's a real depiction. So there'll be a list of things and it'll be like, oh, you can't show like piles of dead bodies, and then it seems to be tailored towards like people using like footage from the news of stuff where people are you know, stuff from war and big tragic events. And it doesn't always clearly distinguish between that and like a cartoon representation of the same thing, which is often what we're dealing with games. We're going to check out Land Trains. I'm probably only going to spend sort of 10 minutes with this because we've played it a few times now. And when I do that sound effect feels like really hard panned on the speakers. It's really strange. Probably only going to spend a little bit of time with this because we saw it last month and the changes are only going to be incremental. But this game is... I've messed up and not pressed the right thing. This game is like an interesting mix of like Snake, where you build a sort of tower defense thing on your snake. I can't get the movement to start up. I don't know what's going on with this build. God, Hatred, that was like 10 years ago, I think, that game. I remember when that happened. Yeah, I mean, there are certain types of... There are lots of things that go into like making something like hatred cross a line, and I think it's like, who are you killing, and what is the context, and does it remind people of a real world context, right? If you have a game where you are playing a bank robber and you're killing lots of people, that is seen very differently from something that could be compared to like something like a school shooting in America, or something that's happening in a domestic place, and the idea of a character that is killing people because they are psychopathic and want to kill people also has a very different resonance than someone who is a criminal who is doing it for money. And perhaps that shouldn't, perhaps that shouldn't be like different, because it's still murdering people. But in terms of the sort of things that I think make people perceive those things differently, I think those are all things you have to factor in. I don't know if Baz is in the chat today. Baz, are you in the chat? I can't get the snake to actually start moving. I don't know why. Susanne said, when it comes to obscenity and gore, US law is a case of you know it when you see it. I mean, UK's like that as well. I don't know if you've ever seen a show called Brass Eye. It's from around 2000s. It's like a satirical British show. And there's an episode where the presenter is pranking a censor. And they get a censor in a room. And I wish I could show it to you, but it's far too obscene. And he has like different bits of an image. There's like a, something disgusting and like a baby's head and stuff, and he's like showing it to the censor and going, is this obscene? And then he like moves the parts around and he goes, is this obscene? And then moves the parts around, and the censor is really operating on that sort of like, I'll know it when I see it kind of. It's like, what are the things, how do they go together, what is the tone of how they're being represented, and all of that kind of stuff. We've ended up doing a weird little like gore and censorship workshop, but I can't get land trains to work this time. I'm sorry, Baz. I don't know if you're in the chat, but I just can't get the thing to move. I don't know what's going on. But we'll check it out again next month. And just to... So our last thing on the list was actually... Where's it gone? Last thing on the list was Escape From Moo, which we saw last time, but we're not actually looking at the game so much this time. We're going to look at the Steam page, because Alejo, the train is not snaking, yeah. Alejo, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but last time we looked at your game and we sort of played it, and I was blown away by this. I got really stuck, and it was one of those situations where if the chat hadn't have been there, I wouldn't have been able to progress. I know there's a lot of talk about this in the, the part of game dev YouTube that I don't like, where everyone goes, which genre should I do if I want to be successful? Don't do this genre because they don't do well. Like, there's a lot of talk in that part of YouTube about puzzle games being a cursed genre, because streamers don't like to play them because they make them feel dumb and they get stuck, and then their audience is just watching them get stuck. But I actually really enjoyed that experience of getting stuck and someone in the chat pointing out how you do it. And one thing I can already see that this marketing copy is doing here, because we're going to look at the marketing copy. I'm sort of bearing the lead here, but we're going to like do a little workshop on the Steam page, because we looked at the game last month and Aleo sort of suggested, like, can we look at text in the community stream? I thought, yeah, why the hell not? I'm not an expert in it. I've done marketing copy before. I've written the descriptions for games. I used to do, when I worked in Roblox games and when I worked on App Store games, I used to have to do like the update descriptions of what's changed in the game, and think about SEO and think about marketing language and like how is the thing structured to make it sound exciting. Because a lot of marketing copywriting is like a combination of are you accurately describing the thing, and are you making it exciting at the same time? Which is difficult. It's two different registers, right? And when we get taught to write, you know, I would have said in English class, but obviously if it's your second language, then it would have been in your Spanish class or Portuguese class or Chinese class or whatever language you learn in. In England, we get like taught there are these distinct types of writing. So you get writing to inform, writing to entertain, writing to express, right? So poetry would be writing to express. And one of the things that's really difficult about marketing is you're writing to inform and tell people exactly what the thing is, but you don't actually want to tell people exactly what the thing is because that's not how you make it sound interesting, right? You can't just write to persuade and say, buy my game, it will change your life, because that's not telling people what it is. So you're mixing together informative writing with a type of writing which is more exciting, enticing, and about persuading someone to buy something by, you know, using kind of emotion and stuff like that. Escape from Moo looks like it's going to be a sort of escape room game, but very quickly, maybe not that quickly in my case, without the help of chat, you start to learn that you're not just doing the puzzles, but you have this mechanic that allows you to look at how the mechanism of the puzzles work and work it out from there. So it has this really interesting, like, deductive element of I'm going to try and stay on the topic of this game for now. It's a really interesting chat going on, though. And Alejo said, you know, when it comes to the copy here, you struggle a bit with the make it exciting part. A colleague said, I usually design great concepts that spark imagination, but then I frame them as something boring and it sounds like a chore. Okay. Frederick said, these images could definitely use some work. The first image is a ladder. Also should think about what the images should convey about what the game is about. Yeah, so I would totally agree with that. So let's look at the set of images before we get into the copywriting, because I think Frederick is absolutely right in the chat there. Like, I think wherever you've got an image like this, which is something that could be from any game, this sort of like, okay, all of the assets look okay, but this is just an image of looking down at some skeletons. And it's like, I've played a Bethesda game before. I know there are already games out there where I can look at a skeleton, you know? So, you know, imagine if you were to describe this image with words, and you were just going to describe it in 2 sentences. A character wearing a shiny bracelet looks down at some skeletons. And it's like, it looks down at a pile of skeletons. Maybe that's a bit more exciting. But if you think about what's actually being depicted here, it's not very exciting, right? Looking at a skeleton in this game is only exciting if the skeleton is in an amusing place, or, you know, there has to be something else going on. So there's that element of like what is being depicted in the image. If we were just to list the items in the image, there's a skeleton, there's some stone, there's some moss, there's a lovely sort of turquoise gem encrusted Rolex that's part of the gameplay. But if you just list the items that are being depicted, there isn't any action happening here. It's just a bunch of stuff we could look at, and the way it's arranged isn't particularly exciting. So there's that side of things, of depiction or representation of what is being shown, and then the other side of the visuals is the kind of composition of like, how are things laid out, what's the depth of this thing, does it look cool? All of that stuff kind of plays into making an image of a game look professional or look cool, right? So this is not an interesting image in terms of what's being depicted, and we're also just looking down at the floor, so we don't get a sense of 3D depth or that there's lots of stuff going on in the background. It's not inviting us into a world, right, when we look at this image. So let's look at the other ones and try and find what we think is a good example. And then after we've done all this imagery stuff, we'll go and look at the marketing copy, because I think these things work together, and this issue of like how to accurately communicate what the game is and also make it sound exciting. Like, this is a visual equivalent of a boring sentence, right? This is a bit more interesting, right? We can look at this image and we can start to, if we were to describe this image using words, those sentences would start to have doing words in, right? They would start to have verbs in. The scarab beetle is flying the trap is held up by a rope. We can start to make statements about the world that have doing words in, and that means that this image is probably a little bit more interesting. There are some elements about this image that make it look dull, like the fact that we've got a place where every texture is the same. It does kind of communicate the genre. It lets us know that this is a puzzle game, but there are some elements of this image that are still a bit dull. But if we compare these, like looking down at some skeletons, just conceptually is not as interesting as like a magical beetle flying through the air, and we can see all these working mechanisms of a trap, right? So this one is already more exciting. So if you were to go through all of your images and say, I'm going to cut out half of these images, right? You could go through this process of like, is the thing that's being presented interesting? Skeletons on the floor? No. Weird magical bug flying through the air and some trap mechanism. That's more interesting, and it's also giving us more of a sense of what the game is about. I mean, we could argue the skeletons do give a sense of what the game is about because you die a lot in this game. But it's not really showing us how they died, right? It's not like a pit full of spikes with all of the skeletons from your previous attempts in it. Which is, if you didn't see the previous stream, I put a edited video of it up last night. But one of the nice things is you kind of get this Super Meat Boy, echoes of all your deaths. You see the skeletons from where you died before, and they stay there when you reincarnate. I really like that element of the game, but this screenshot doesn't communicate that. So it's showing us something that's in the game, could be satisfying or fun, but if you haven't played the game, you don't understand from this screenshot what's going on. And like, we've got some dramatic lighting here. There's a little bit more of a sense of this is a game about mechanisms. I don't think any of these shots of mechanisms really get across how complex the process of looking at the mechanisms and like working them out is. Even like in the period we played last month, you kind of take the bug and you're able to fly behind the mechanisms and look at how they work, or fly under them and look at how they work, and then work the puzzle out. And then when you turn back into a human and you reincarnate, then you sort of you sort of have to then mentally rotate everything to be able to carry out the puzzle, the solution to the puzzle that you worked out while you were the bug. And I think to really kind of communicate what's cool about that, you need to show the most complex bits of the mechanisms from a cool angle. This image is doing nice stuff in terms of the lighting. It makes it feel a lot more dramatic. We're getting some nice compositional stuff here. We're getting a sense of depth. Your kind of like monkey brain immediately goes, what's around that corner, right? So the image is doing some nice compositional stuff that makes your brain ask questions about what's over there, what's down there. But it's still not kind of showing the cool thing about the game, which is these complex trap mechanisms that you get to see and work out, and that's kind of the core of the puzzle. And yeah, I think Alejo said, do you think having smaller mechanisms that fit in the screen would solve that? Perhaps. It might be that you need to cheat a little bit to make your screenshots. Like maybe you need to allow yourself to clip through the wall so you can get a bit further back and take shots that are, I don't know how strict the rules are about how a screenshot must be from a genuine player perspective. Now this one, I think this one is really good. It's a visually confusing image, right? But remember, if you are aiming for people that want to solve deductive puzzles, then I think this is the strongest image so far, because I can see it and I can see, oh, there's a mechanism here, and there's a mechanism here, and there's a mechanism here, and there's some blocks over here. This is a really strong image in terms of conveying what the game is about, right? And this ladder one, it's like, I can see why you would include this, because the body in this game is very well rendered, and it's an impressive thing about the game. But I think if you want to show that, then maybe gameplay footage where, you have a second of the character going up a ladder and then they're in a position where they can look around and then you see it's a puzzle game, That's an interesting way to show that you have a full-bodied character and it's really well rendered. but I don't think you've got a full-bodied character and it's climbing a ladder is really nicely animated. I don't think that's enough of a thing to bother putting a screenshot up of it. Whereas this is a very strong still image in terms of conveying what's cool about the game to the target audience, right? Because, like, I mean, if we compare it to this one, which is probably the weakest of the images, this one could be from a combat game, right? It's like, oh, I'm in a dungeon and 1, 2, 3, 4 skeletons just attack me and I beat them up with my fists, right? Someone could interpret this image as being that's what's happened. And then what's happening is your image is now communicating to the wrong target audience because they think they're going to get Escape From Moo, the action game where you punch skeletons. And actually, this, out of all of the images, is the one that is the most likely to excite someone who is the right audience for this game because it shows the complexity. I look at that image and I can see it hurts my brain a little bit. It starts to induce the kind of thinking that you want from someone who enjoys puzzle games, where I look at it and I'm like, what's going on here? How does this all fit together? The only way I'd be able to work out how that all fits together is to step into that image, and you can start to see how this is now a marketing funnel, and I'm being pulled into the thing that you want me to do, which is to add the game to my wish list so that I can go into that image and find out what's happening, right? Whereas even if this was like the best composed image and it was like a good camera angle and there was a bit more detail in the background, the image would not communicate what you want. Because if we make a better version of this image, which is some hands and some skeletons on the ground, the person who is then going to be attracted to click on add your wish list, let's assume that they don't read anything and they just go on the images, is someone who wants to play Skeleton Puncher. And this game isn't Skeleton Puncher. This game is like a head scratching, like physical 3D puzzle game. So I think using those two as your extremes of like, this is an example of a good image that really attracts the right person, and the other example of like a image that it's not good from a composition point of view, it doesn't show the game well in terms of the backdrop, but even if we made that really good, as skeletons on the floor is going to attract the wrong person, even if we made it the best skeletons on the floor we could, right? Because they're going to think it's Skyrim. It's not Skyrim. So that's kind of everything I have to say about the imagery. Let's see what people are saying in the chat, and then we'll move on to the marketing copy. Seamus is saying about there's this idea of making the trailer and screenshots first, test the market, then make the game. Yeah, I mean, it is a good way to test for appeal, and I would say even if you're not doing it to test it with an audience, that's kind of stuff that is worth doing as part of pre-production for your game. One of the things I often encourage people to do is, like, if you're making a game and you haven't worked out the art style yet, like, make a fake screenshot so that you can work out how big things are. So you can work out how big things are, you can work out what color they are, you can work out textures and stuff. Like, things like fake screenshots, or like, if you've got a very story-driven game or a game where the world matters, like, what would be a paragraph of like voiceover from that game that you would put in a trailer? Even if you're not really making the trailer, you're not really showing it to anyone, that can be a really cool, helpful thing to do in pre-production for a game. Like, once you're past the initial prototype stage and you think, I've got a cool idea here, I want to invest some time, maybe some money into making this into a big thing, like, those elements that would be part of a trailer, they should be part of your GDD, probably. Like, maybe your game design document is 99% focused on game design and not narrative. You can still open it with a little, like, italicized paragraph that's like, in the beginning, there was skeletons, and then they fell down a hole. The kind of stuff that would be in a trailer. So I don't know how I feel about fake trailers as a ethical thing, in terms of, like, tricking an audience into thinking the game exists when it doesn't. But I think it's a good way of thinking about the, like, creative direction of your game, like, even if the mechanics aren't there yet. And I mean, Darkest Dungeon is an example of a game that did this. When they kickstarted and they got their funding, they had a prototype for the game, but a lot of what was in the Kickstarter video was faked. It was like animatics, and it was basically, I don't know how open they were about that with their audience, but it was basically They were saying like this is what the game will look like when it's made. It wasn't made. It was just like, here is the animation style. We'll fake it. We'll move stuff around, and that's a good way to give yourself a template of what the final game should look like, even if it's not real at the time. Yeah. So let's take a look at the marketing copy side of things. I'll zoom it right in because we're focused on the text now. It feels a bit awkward to have, I mean, this is logo, but I'm just going to make the comment while it's in my head. Feels a bit awkward to have the scarab in here as the O and here. Like, I think you need to pick one or the other, you know? Like, you either do the typographic trick of having a thing as the O, or you put that thing out here. I mean, the from could be a gear, you know, like a wooden cog to sort of represent what you're engaging with most of the game. If you like having the scarab out here, then put some stuff in the text that is like, hey, this is a puzzle with gears and pulleys, you know, like a little wooden cog here. Or if you want to keep the scarab here, then show something different in the background. You know, show a mechanism or something. Explore the remains of the lost civilization of Moo. Solve spatial puzzles crafted by primitive engineers using real mechanical principles. Fly as a scarab to explore and find your way out. Okay. So, this is already a good setup. You're already doing some things really well. So we've got sentences that start with verbs, right? Explore, solve, fly. Which is, on one hand, this is what you do in marketing. It's called a call to action. And basically, the psychological thinking behind this is when someone reads marketing copy that starts with a verb, their brain interprets it as an instruction, and that primes their brain to already do the thing, right? So, for example, when you're in a shop or a store, if you're an American, and it says buy one, get one free, right? Now, what that sentence is supposed to mean is if you buy one of these things, you will get another one for free, right? But because the sentence is front-loaded with the instruction, your brain interprets it as an imperative, like it interprets it as an instruction, like a thing you must do. So even though the sentence is ostensibly saying, if you do this, then this will happen, your brain it starts to think about buying the thing because it started with buy the thing, right? And this is what we call a call to action in marketing. It's when you tell someone to do something. I'm terrible at this. Whenever I talk about our Patreon on YouTube, I always kind of do this and go, if you like what I do here, then maybe you give me some money, right? And the maybe that works from a kind of human standpoint, but the thinking in like marketing theory is that you just tell people what to do and then maybe you explain yourself afterwards. So this is already written according to that sort of established language in marketing where we say do this, do this, do this. And the thing that's a nice overlap here is that in game design it's often best to kind of explain your mechanics in this way as well, because it helps you to understand whether your game has a point, right? What are the actions? Kill enemies, collect treasure, da-da-da-da. So we've already got that here. I would say the thing that is slightly weaker here is that we have actions and we have some of them that feel sort of like they are pointing towards a goal, but the goal isn't super clear and the stakes aren't very clear, right? Let's have a look. Explore the remains of lost civilization of Moo. That's sort of a goal. It's a very broad goal. And it doesn't have much stakes to it. It's not like something bad is going to happen if you don't do it. And I think another thing that's missing here, if we think of the genre and we think of like Tomb Raider and and Indiana Jones and all of that kind of archaeological exploration stuff. There's not a sense that you're saving the world by doing this, and there's not a sense that there's a interesting mystery behind everything, right? I think that is all implicit in the game. It's suggested by the game. The mood of the game and the feel when you're walking around in this environment is all there. So I keep bumping my headphones into pop stand. The mood and the feel is all there of mystery and intrigue, but this doesn't have it in there. So the components that this needs to have are, there needs to be a bigger stake of, you're doing this to save something or to prevent something, or you're doing this to uncover some fantastical mystery that we don't know about. And at the moment, we've got find your way out, right? As a sort of driver, as a motivator, as a sense of stakes of you need to find your way out. But that doesn't sound as perilous as it could do, right? And this is a game where we're dying a bunch of times and becoming a skeleton. So I would try and inject some peril into this. Yeah? So, yeah, Alejo, who's the developer who's in the chat, has said this needs to go stakes, then goal, then story, right? And we can stack the stakes as well. We could say there are two stakes here. One is you're an archaeologist who is in this location, and you're the only person who's ever been here, and you have a chance to uncover what happened to these mysterious people, right? And they're not like a specific ethnicity or empire here. It seems to be like a made-up one that's not quite Aztec, not quite Mayan, and there's some alien stuff thrown in as well. So the idea that there is this big archaeological stake of, like, you're the only person who's ever found this place, and now you can't get out, and you're in peril, right? And this might be the only chance a living person gets to explore this place and find out about it. And on top of that, if you don't live and you don't get out, then anything you learn is going to be lost, right? So if the structure of these sentences is already there, you've already done the right thing of going like, do the thing, explore the thing, solve the thing. But what's not being communicated is this kind of emotional sense of peril, this kind of intellectual sense of like, you are role-playing as an archaeologist, and this archaeologist really cares about learning about this civilization, right? Yeah, trying to get across the why of all of this stuff should be done is a, yeah, that's the important part. Susanoo said, a good book on this is The Consuming Instinct by Dr. Gad Saad. Is that like a marketing book about how you get people to want stuff? Is that... I don't read much about marketing. I've done like very basic stuff when I used to sort of... I used to be a teaching assistant, and I used to help out in business classes, and we did like the most basic stuff of like the 4 Ps and how you write marketing copy and stuff, but I haven't read loads and loads of stuff about marketing. So yeah, we've got stakes, then goal, and then story. And this accurately describes what you do in the game. I would say the order of it also feels a bit out, because fly as a scarab to explore and find your way out. Okay, find your way out is starting to hint at the stakes of like, you need to escape. But it doesn't make it sound as perilous as it could do. And flying as a scarab is a cool thing, but it's also like, I wouldn't put it at the end, because the end feels like the last sentence should hit, right? It should either be like the big whammy of the stakes coming in on the last sentence, or it should be like a question mark, like the last sentence is telling you about the mystery, or not telling you about them, pointing towards the mystery, right? So that you can wonder about it. So I would go, 3-sentence structure is a good structure. And I would say, tell us who you are and why you're here in the first sentence. Then tell us the game mechanics in the second sentence. And then the last sentence, try and treat it like a question mark. Not literally, not like it has to have a question mark. Or it could be a, will you be able to blah, blah, blah type sentence. Like, will you escape? Or will you die down here and lose the knowledge that you've, whatever the more elegant way of putting that is. I did a short video a few months ago about marketing copy, and we looked at a few examples, and I think Dredge was one of them. And let's look at what they do here. So I mean, this is People always complain when I talk about like big indie games. It's like,
That's not relevant. That's a game made by 10 people. It's like, well, yeah, I'm using it to talk about how the marketing copy is written. How is that?
okay. Dredge is a single-player fishing adventure with a sinister undercurrent. So they actually start with a sentence that is just game title is da-da-da. And what they do here is they say single-player fishing adventure. So they very clearly describe the game genre from a gameplay point of view with a sinister undercurrent. And this is like mood, right? So this is a really powerful sentence. Because if you imagine there are two types of people looking at your page, and there's a type of player that is very driven by mood and story, and then there's a type of player that only cares about certain types of games. So the single-player fishing adventure is going to the mechanics person, and the sinister undercurrent is going to the mood-themed story person, right? And of course, we all like games based on a combination of those things. But if you imagine these like two extreme people, then that's one sentence that is talking to both of these types of things, both of these types of appeals that people care about with their games. So this is a really good setup, and they've done 3 sentences as well. So first sentence, blah blah blah, is this type of game with this mood to it, and then we've got a call to action. Here it's not, the call to action isn't download the game, right? The call to action is telling you what you do in the game: sell your catch, upgrade your boat, and dredge the depths for long buried secrets. So we're getting the sinister undercurrent, and the long buried secrets are giving us the mood. And the other thing that this sentence does is it starts with the most commonly done action in the game, and then it kind of moves out there to things that you do less often, and then it moves out there to the like big goal of the game, right? So sell your catch, you're going to be doing that a couple of times a session. It's the smallest game loop, it's the most repetitive part of the game. Upgrade your boat is like the investment part of the game loop. So you're selling your catch in order to get money to upgrade your boat. And because people are smart, you don't need to say sell your catch to get money to upgrade your boat, right? We can create this list, sell your catch, comma, upgrade your boat, comma, and people will naturally see how selling and upgrade relate to each other because they're not dumb. And dredge the depths for long buried secrets, which is giving us mood, and is also giving us stakes and like bigger story stuff, right? And you can see how it's starting with the moment to moment, it's going out to the midterm of like the thing you're trying to do, why you're selling your catch, you're doing it to afford to upgrade your boat, and then the thing you're trying to do by upgrading your boat is to find out about these long buried secrets. So don't listen. If you're the developer of Dredge, or if you're the publisher at Team 17, turn this video off now, because what I'm going to say to Alejo about Escape From Moo is just copy this one, because this is really good, right? The first sentence tells us what the game is. The second sentence describes the game mechanics, going from most frequent and moment to moment. What is the pleasurable thing I'm doing at every moment? Solving puzzles, right? Transforming between a human and a bug, whatever, starting with the most frequent appealing thing, and then ending in the big picture stakes thing you're trying to do, which is to escape and uncover mysteries, right? Really powerful sentence. And again, it's mixing things from the two buckets. It's doing the same thing as this first sentence of like, here is a bit about the game mechanics, what you're doing, and here is a bit about why you're doing it and the bigger picture. And it's packing loads into one sentence. The second sentence is doing exactly the same thing as the first. I mean, it's structured differently, but it's doing that same payoff of talking about mechanics and theme mood at the same time. And then explore a mysterious archipelago. This is zooming out even further, right? So this is not the moment to moment. It's the what you were doing over the course of 3 to 10 hours, right? And discover why some things are best left forgotten. And that is a great bit of a sentence. Because we've got a verb, you're discovering stuff, right? Which is helping to identify that this is a game about mystery and intrigue. And then why some things are best left forgotten is ominous, right? It's creepy. It's not saying to... It's like... This is the language equivalent of doing show, don't tell. Because it's not saying... Explore a mysterious archipelago, which is really creepy. Right? It's giving us the creeps by saying discover why some things are best left forgotten. It's promising that as a player, if you play all this game all the way through, you're going to discover this. You're going to answer these questions, and then you're going to feel like a sense of regret about knowing that, which is like a deeply like Lovecraftian thing. If you think of like the cosmic horror genre, it's like there is a detective or a journalist or something. They're trying to find out the truth about this supernatural horror, and once they learn the truth, then they regret it and they wish they hadn't got involved, right? And they go mad. That's what happens in Lovecraft, and that's what Dredge is based on. So I'm not saying, maybe I take back what I said about copying this, because you don't want to copy it exactly, because the tone of how this is written is evoking Lovecraftian horror, right? So they have got a fishing game, and they've got 3 really tight sentences which take you through, you are fishing, you're selling your fish, you're upgrading your boat. That's the game mechanics. And then this broader mood-based thing, which is drawn from Lovecraftian cosmic horror, which is this sense of, you're going to uncover a secret, and then you're going to go mad because it's so dark and weird, right? Now, I think if we go back to Escape from Moo, and we think about that same interaction, right? The interaction in Dredge is you've got a fishing game, that's the mechanics. Half of the description is about the fishing game mechanics, and then all the stuff to do with stake and mood is coming from the like the thematic genre of Lovecraftian horror. In Escape from Moo, we've got puzzle game mechanics of deducing and like looking at the environment and mentally rotating and all of this kind of juicy 3D puzzle stuff. And then the thematic side of things is coming from Tomb Raider, it's coming from Indiana Jones, and it's coming from whatever inspired those things, right? So, I don't know, like King Solomon's Mines, stuff like that. There's probably like archaeological literature, like archaeological fiction literature that some of this stuff comes from as well. And you have to think about what is the appeal of that, because that is how you get the stakes and mood and story part of your game, right? And your game in this case doesn't necessarily have to have a massive story, but it needs to give us that sense of like, what does this character that we're role-playing as care about in the world, and why are they where they are, and why are they doing this thing, right? So James just giving ticks about the Dredge description. Ominous vibe, ominous game, right? And Susanoo, yeah, classic. Who, what, why, when, and how is all there. That's what Dredge is doing at the moment. And just to try and I don't want to go through this and rewrite it for you, because I think that would be a different kind of workshop. And I think what we've done today with this is already quite useful. And I'd rather give you like the tools to be able to do this yourself, because that's more helpful. And when I edit this down and make a short video out of it, as I inevitably will, it'll be more helpful to tell people how to do the thing rather than showing them exactly. But one of the issues with this Steam description is it sort of addresses the player as the player, right? And I would say, if you go back to the Dredge one, what the Dredge description does is it assumes the player is already playing and has already taken on the role of a fisher person in a scary world, right? And it talks to you as if you're already that character. And this talks to us as if we're like the player of a game, or the potential player of a game looking at a Steam page, right? So if you think about the Dredge description and try and apply some of the principles here, then what I would be trying to do is rewrite this as if you're talking to the archaeologist, right? And then we assume that your target audience for the game wants to be an archaeologist and thinks being an archaeologist is cool, because, right? They wouldn't play the game if they didn't think that was a cool thing to be. So you speak to the player as if they are an archaeologist uncovering a city and trying not to die and trying to escape and all of these things, rather than speaking to them, rather than like breaking the fourth wall and talking to them as if they're a player. And I think that will solve a lot of the potential problems here. It's not a bad description. It's doing a lot of things right. It's doing those sentences that start with verbs that we're taught to do in like marketing speak. But it's not engaging the player as if they're already engaged with the game, which is, I think, the thing you need to do when you're writing marketing copy for games, right? Frederick just said that Dredge does that for the second and third set. Let's do one more trip back to Dredge and see the examples. So In Dredge, sell your catch, upgrade your boat, and dredge the depths for long buried secrets. Yeah, it's not talking to us as if we're a player. It's talking to us as if we're already in the role of the player character. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do. So there's nothing here where they've had to tell you, in this game, you take on the role of a fisherman in a scary world. It's like implying all of that stuff by how it speaks to you. And it's doing that in 3 sentences. And none of that is easy. None of that is like this one trick will help you sell as many copies as Dredge. I'm going to cut this down and call this video that. This one trick will help you make an indie game that sells however many copies Dredge sold, right? It might also help if your game is signed to Team 17 and you have their marketing budget and all of that kind of stuff. But it is giving us a really good guide for like how to do this well, right? And remember, every time you see this and it's from like a indie publisher like Annapurna or Team 17 or Devolver or whatever, this is not the game developer writing. I mean, it might be the game developer writing this, but they probably have a marketing expert there who really knows what they're doing. So when you have the chance to learn from a game like this, you should, because you know that this has come from like a marketing expert who knows more about this than you do or I do, because it's from a publisher that has marketers working at it, right? So looking at what they're doing, understanding what they're doing, and trying to copy it a bit is often better than just sort of like trying to abstractly look at your own game and just like work out from first principles from scratch, like how do I write marketing copy for a game. So I'm gonna stop there because I feel like we're just repeating a lot of the same things over and over again. But let's just pop in the chat one last time before we end the stream. Publishers hate this one trick. Yeah, I hope you found that useful. Like I know we sort of diverged into talking about images a little bit, but I think they do different jobs, and the text, you know, it's really about this describes what the game is already. It just needs to make it sound a bit more exciting, and thinking about like what is the fantasy with an Indiana Jones? How would you speak to someone about this game if they were Indiana Jones, right? And put the reader already in the position of that person. Because one of the things is, like, when you market anything, your Steam page is not meant to appeal to every single person on Steam, right? What your Steam page is meant to do is appeal to the person for whom which this would be the perfect game. Because you can't make everyone like your game. All you can do is properly identify the people who would be the perfect audience for your game. And the people who would be the perfect audience for your game would be the people who like that screenshot that shows the complexity of these puzzles, and the people who like the theme of being an intrepid adventurer stuck down a hole, right? And if you can make it so that everything on this page, the iconography in the logo, the text in the copy, the screenshots and the videos, everything needs to speak to that person that you imagine, your avatar, your player that is your ideal player for this. And just assume that they already exist, and just talk to that specific person, and then it should do well. Hey Borodin, we're coming up to the end of the stream now, but I am going to probably clip a lot of this stuff, and it will be popping up on the page. So we'll do I'll do a stream highlights video that is focused on the games themselves, and sort of goes through some of the fun gameplay moments or little discussions we had about design. I'll do a clip video of those that's like stream highlights, and then the conversation we just had about Alejo's game and a marketing copy and marketing in general will probably become its own video. So these are really helpful streams. When I started this channel, I was very focused on just doing scripted content, where it was like I'll take, you know, something I would have said as a lecture at university and turn it into videos. And I really like this format because it means that those of you who have joined the Discord get a little bonus of, you know, getting targeted feedback on your games, and your games get seen by people, and but we also get these little diversions where we talk about the stuff that matters to you or stuff that you are particularly wrestling with, and then that's just like solving so many problems at once, right? You get your games out there without having to become a YouTuber as well, which is nice, because I don't really believe everyone should have to become their own press, right? It's a really frustrating situation we're in, and it's like it in every medium. If you try and get anywhere in music, it's like, oh, you have to become a TikToker or a YouTuber or whatever. And the thing I've seen time and time again is when people are making a game and they start doing YouTube to market their own game, they quickly fall down into this route of becoming a teacher, and all of their content is like, how I learned to do this, how I learned to do this. And it's like, that's fine if you want to be a YouTube teacher, but you're going to start attracting an audience of people who want to learn game development, which are not the audience for your game, right? The audience for your game are, in the case of Escape From Moo, the audience is people that like deductive puzzle games and archaeology. And that's not the same as someone who is trying to learn game development, right? So I hope doing this kind of thing is a good service to the community, because you get eyes on your game without having to become a YouTuber, which is I think we need more of that, because I don't think everyone should have to become a YouTuber just because they want a creative career making games or art or music or whatever. It's a really horrible situation. Yeah, exactly. We don't become polymaths in a day, right? Like, I quite like doing this, and I think if I was doing this to promote my own games, I would hate it very quickly. I like editing videos. I don't mind that. I find that a very peaceful activity, and the fact that I can provide some sort of service for people that are making games and do something I enjoy at the same time is great, right? And I can allow what I do to be driven by what you're doing, right? To some degree. So that's really good. I think there might be some time coming up where what I do on the channel starts to cross over with my freelance work a little bit, because I have a couple of jobs I'm doing where I'm doing design on a game in a particular genre, and I really need to research that genre quite a bit. So if you start to see videos pop up where it's like, a week of Joe talking about match 3 games, then it's probably because there's a research project I need to do to work in that genre, and I'm just like throwing out my research as YouTube content at the same time. It's probably going to start happening soon, because I've got a few projects coming up like that where it's a cool project, I like the genre, but I don't feel like I know enough about it, so I'm going to have to do a deep dive and look at good and bad examples of that genre. It's not a match 3, it's something else, but you'll be able to guess when it starts. You're entering that everything I do is content based being a YouTuber. Yeah, totally. But yeah, I mean, someone said they appreciate the sort of longer scripted videos. Yeah, I will continue to do those. And one of the things that's helpful about having the Discord and having people support me on Patreon is it helps to guide me as to like what I should be doing more or less of. So at the moment, Indies Under the Knife is the worst performing thing I do on the channel. If I were to split everything up into categories and say, like, what do people click on? What do they watch? People don't want to watch that because it's a guy they don't know talking about a game they don't know. But it is the heart of the channel, and it's like the people who subscribe and the people who like contribute financially and stuff. That's the thing they would have watched first. So you have it's kind of like what we were talking about Steam marketing a minute ago. Like, not everything you make is for everything, and sometimes you need to make the thing that you're making super targeted and not worry too much about the numbers, because it's not about how many people, like, we'll get super businessy now, but it's not about how many people have an impression of the thing, it's about how many people convert, right? So I'm gonna have to do a quick maths. 1,000 people seeing your thing and only 1% of them converting is worse than 100 people seeing your thing and 10% of them converting? Or is that the same? It's the same. It's the same as it, right? So, like, the percentage of, like, how many people see the thing versus, like, how many people go, that's exactly my shit, right? Which is, it's what you're actually trying to achieve when you take a thing to market, whether it's a game or a YouTube channel or anything. And one of the issues is, like, YouTube is very well built in terms of giving you analytics and giving you data, but they sort of gamify it a little bit. It's like, here's your top 10 best performing videos, and it's like, well, in views, yeah, but like, how are you going to tell me which videos actually reach the people I want to reach and like engage with the people I want to engage? You know, there isn't a metric for that because it's qualitative and not quantitative. So, you know. Yeah, some stuff in the chat about deep dives on specific genres. Another thing I would really like to do, but to be honest, I don't think I would be able to do it without money to pay people, is I want to find some YouTubers that stream specific genres of games and do an interview series where they sort of talk about how you make a good one of those. Like they give design advice. So, you know, you've got YouTubers that just play city builders or just play ImSims or just play Metroidvanias. You find one of those YouTubers, get them to do a podcast for like an hour about, like, if you were making one of these, what would you put in? What would you leave out? What are your favorite features? What are your favorite twists on the genre type thing? I would love to do an interview podcast like that. And it's not game developers, right? It's not interviewing game developers. It's interviewing streamers who are genre experts. Because one of the things I find time and time again is you get a lot of game developers who are making a game, and this doesn't apply to anyone. There are lots of developers who are an expert in their genre, but often you find developers who are making a game because they've sort of stumbled into a game engine and they've started making a platform and they started making this or that, and they haven't actually played much in that genre, right? They're making an FPS and their reference points is like COD and Doom and nothing else, yeah? Or they're making a Metroidvania and they've only ever played Hollow Knight. They've never played Castlevania, they never played Metroid, they'd never played Castle Droid or Metroidvania. They've just got like this very specific reference point in the genre. And I would love to be able to create a resource for game developers that is like, hey, you're making one of these? Well, this person is the expert on that. And again, because they're game developers and a lot of the content they watch is game development content, they're not necessarily watching that, you know, that YouTuber who's played 200 Metroidvanias talk about the genre, which is probably the best thing they could do as someone who is trying to design a game in that genre. But they don't consume content unless it's presented as game development content, right? So if I could get to a situation where I can offer people, because a lot of these YouTubers that have the big followings or streamers that are genre specialists probably aren't going to do that kind of interview unless I can pay them. So if I could get to a situation where, like, once a month I can give someone $200 or whatever to talk to me for an hour about how do you make a good one of these, I think that would knock it out of the park. I think it would be the sort of thing people would watch. I think it would be really helpful to people because, you know, I'm not an expert in every genre of games. It's something that comes up frequently on this channel. It feels like a meme at this point of, like, someone sends me a horror game, I go, I don't really know about horror games. Someone sends me a cozy game, I don't really know about cozy games. You know, and to be able to do interviews with players who are experts in things, and, you know, because they are content creators, they're good at explaining things, they're good at expressing themselves. I just think that would be one of the best series I could do. So let's make that happen at some point. I don't know how. Let's all rob a bank. Get together in the Discord, rob a bank. It's a very good conversation happening in the chat. I'm not going to read it all out because it won't make sense to anyone. Won't make sense to anyone outside the context of this. Jesus, Jesus, sorry, said, I'm learning to code just to make a better ROM of Pokemon Gold, but no one will notice. How can I avoid overthink about it? I mean, someone might notice. I don't think you should go in pre-assuming that no one will notice, but they'll only notice if you make it, if you make them notice, right? So there's got to be a community that wants that, right? So it's kind of find out who that community is, and we nearly always do better creative work. Some people who are like artsy fartsy people won't agree with me on this, but this is like how I define the difference between art and design. Is like, art is when you make what you want to make to express yourself, and design is when you make something for someone else. And obviously that's a sliding scale. There are loads of game developers, musicians, filmmakers who fit somewhere in the middle of that. They're trying to make money, they're trying to reach an audience, but they're also doing something expressive, right? But if you want to do well in a design field like game design, one of the best things you can do, it's true of YouTube as well actually, is think about how you can serve people. And if you start off from that perspective of like, does anyone actually want this thing? And if people do want a better ROM of Pokemon Gold, I'm not even sure I know what that means, but if people want that, then your goal is to find them and make sure that you know, like, that they're out there and you know what they want as well, rather than it just being like your own opinion of what would make Pokemon Gold better or whatever. It's very hard to do that when you're learning to code, because you have all these anxieties about, can I do this thing? So you have to sort of play this little game of tennis of, you know, do a bit of focusing on your skills. You go into your cave, you focus on your skills for a little while, then you go out into a community and you go, hey guys, I'm just learning, but I've done this thing. What do you think? I'm trying to improve this, that, and the other. You engage with the community for a little while, and you learn about what they want and how you can serve them. And then you go, oh, I can't quite do this. So you go back to your cave, you learn a bit more skills and stuff. You get a bit more, you know, confident in what you can do. You have to sort of switch between these modes. It's like, you know, being a hermit that lives in a little shack coding or making art, and then going on a little pilgrimage to the community who are eventually going to buy this thing and talking to them about it, and, you know, finding out what they want, and not just going in as a salesperson. Like, hey, I'm making this, pay attention to me. Like, go in, you know, what would you improve about the Pokemon ROM? Again, saying a sentence I don't fully understand. It's one of the reasons why sort of creative fields, you often like, I was looking at statistics for the UK recently because I was trying to put together a pitch deck, right? So I was making a pitch deck that was like explaining what I do on this channel. So like, I'd send it out to like UK funders and say, I'm doing a games education thing, give me money so I can have a studio and not have to work in with the with this background. And one of the things I was explaining was like, there's a load of data in the UK about who goes into the games industry, and there's a load of statistics you would expect. It's mostly men, it's mostly white men, like, even if you account for like the actual proportion of ethnicities in that country. And the one that was really interesting to me is it's mostly people from middle class backgrounds, and they determine that based on like what profession your mum and dad have. And then they use that to basically say, well, this is not an industry that people like socially move into and climb up the social ladder. It tends to be people who come from affluent backgrounds who are encouraged to just follow their hobbies when they're kids and stuff. Whereas if you come from a poor background, you don't necessarily get encouraged to do something like computer science when you're a kid, or art when you're a kid, unless there's a very clear outcome of like, you're going to become a, you know, it's very, it's not passion driven. And you might get encouraged to do computing, but not because it's a hobby, more because it's like, that's a job that pays well kind of thing. And I can't remember where I was going with this, but it can be very anxiety inducing trying to enter any creative field like making games and stuff, because you're kind of thinking, oh, do I belong here? Am I good enough at the thing? And I think one of the best things you can just do to start off with is go in and be friendly and be curious about other people. And one of the things about making games is something that we're often attracted to. It's like electronic music. It's like, oh, a thing I get to do on my own with headphones on, sat at a computer. So you sort of develop this sense of, this is not a sociable thing. But in order to be successful doing the thing, you do have to be a sociable person and treat it as a service to other people and be curious about other people and what they want and stuff. And this is why lots of people never make the jump from being a solo game developer to being a game designer, because being a designer is about serving other people, which requires curiosity about other people. You know, it requires you to care about other people, and it requires you to not have this attitude of like, I'm a solitary genius that works on my own in my little hermit shack, which is how a lot of technical people see what they do. You know, that leave me alone, I'm coding. And that's why bigger game teams have designers and programmers who are different people, because it requires different types of brains, different types of personality types. The sort of person who can do it all and do a solo project and really deliver and, you know, make Stardew Valley is really rare. And I don't say that to be discouraging. I say that because it's just an unusual sort of person to have all of those things. As someone said in the chat a moment ago, you know, we don't become polymaths overnight. A polymath is someone who, you know, is an expert in lots of different things, right? And like, I can only do the things I do because I've spent like big chunks of my life doing a thing because I was interested in it, and then abandoning it because I thought there was no future, and then doing something else. But it all comes back eventually. You know, I wrote when I was 21, I wrote a script for a comic book, like 400 pages of script. I've never done any creative writing since that. But some of the ideas from it have gone into Twine games. They've gone into pieces of music, and like, there's never anything. You never waste anything by being creative. It comes back, and you reuse the stuff later on. It's like fertilizer. You know, it goes into the soil, and you come and you dig it up later on, and you use it for something else. So, you know, I'm just rambling now. It's going to become a inspirational podcast with like dolphins jumping over the sun or something. Seamus said, game developers mostly middle class autistic but creative people. Lol. Yeah. I mean, there's an interesting thing there about the idea of neurodiversity, right? It's like, when I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD when I was an adult. And like, these are things that when you're at school, it's like, oh, you're different from everyone. But if you go to a game studio, it's like, no, most of the programmers have autism, most of the artists have ADHD, and about a third of the studio have both. And it's like, having particular types of brains just sort of encourages you to engage with the world in a particular type of way, to be curious about something, maybe to avoid people and get more into hobbies because you're avoiding social stuff, or maybe the things you do you find soothing. Like, there are programmers who enjoy programming because it's like, you know, undoing knots of things. It's like a soothing activity, like stimming. And same with writing music, same with writing poetry. These are things that we do because we enjoy the process, and there may be like neurodevelopmental reasons why we enjoy doing particular repetitive things, or like really difficult things, like masochistically difficult things. There's all sorts of factors that go into making someone the sort of person that makes games or makes any kind of art, you know? Seamus, is that on Bandcamp? Can you drop the Cat album? Frederick said, yeah, this is where I'm normal. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I work in games because it's a way for me to be comfortable, right? I don't work in games because I have a specific attachment to games as a media. I enjoy making them because it allows me to spend time working with and talking with people who are similar to me. I have the same thing with music, right? Like, I enjoy making music because I enjoy the sorts of people that it connects me with, right? I could probably enjoy being an accountant if it connected with me with the right sort of people, but it doesn't, right? So it's like the work, it has some kind of quality to it that you find intrinsically satisfying. Like, that's why you like programming or drawing or whatever it is. But there's also a sense of like, who else is doing this, and who do I get to kind of chat to and interact with by doing this? And if there's not a fit there, you're going to be kind of driven away from it, right? I think that's why there's so much like there's so much anger about, like, when you see like the grifters and the anti-DEI people going on about games, right? One of the classic ones, like, I occasionally YouTube tries to make me watch like Smash JT or one of these, or side scrollers, or any of these YouTubers who are like, you know, have an IQ less than 100 and really hate people with blue hair, you know, I occasionally like hate watch one of these things, and it's always like one of the things they do is like they show you a studio and they're like, look at this studio, look how it's gone to shit because there's this person with blue hair and piercings there, and it's really a generation of people who can't understand that, like, or not generation, a group of people who have been led to believe that making a game is like a purely technical exercise in programming, and they can't get their head around the fact that there are people with like arts and humanities degrees working in game studios, and it's like, mate, this is interactive art. Why did you expect a game studio to have like different people in it from like a film studio or a music studio? It's gonna have arty people with blue hair in it, right? That's not DEI. That's not like some conspiracy to like get rid of all the skilled people who were like dudes who wore heavy metal t-shirts and replace them with like non-binary people with tattoos and piercings and blue hair. It's like, no, it's like that's what creative people are like, and game studios are a combination of technical and creative people, and some people who sit somewhere in the middle. It's so weird. Right, anyway, I'm going to sign off now because I need to make some lunch and do some day job work, but it's been great chatting to you all, and I hope you had a good time wherever you are in the world, and I'll speak to you all soon, and remember that you must dye your hair blue. I mean, yeah, dudes who wear heavy metal t-shirts probably do have an enormous overlap with people who make games. Yeah, totally. But it's definitely not the only demographic. So it's why I made my ludonarrative dissonance hoodie be a brutal metal style one. Right, see you all soon. Signing off now.